This is the age of dungeons where monsters spawn and fill the earth. Naturally, humanity was granted the power to fight back. But there are dungeons that remain unconquerable specifically. There are 7 dungeons that mankind has yet to master, known as the 7 Great Dungeons. The most notorious is the Ancient Core. This dungeon has 3 entrances, each guarded by a sentinel. The red path on the left is guarded by a tiny person named Renee. The main blue path in the middle is protected by a warrior named Patrick. And the black path on the right, reputed to be the filthiest, is guarded by countless tentacles. With their numbers unknown, the creature ruling this impregnable fortress is a monster that has lived for 1,000 years, appearing on the very first page of Imperial mythology. It goes by the fancy name Devourer. That is all humanity knows about the Ancient Core dungeon from a certain book, but they have no idea that that book was actually released by the Dungeon Master and his 2 followers specifically to lure adventurers in to lose their lives. It keeps the dungeon alive. After all, if a dungeon is too mysterious, who would dare approach it? We need to give them a little information like this, to make them think they know a lot about this dungeon. Only then will they charge in here, like moths to a flame, never knowing that more than half of that information is false. Truly, since that book was leaked, 74 adventurers have wandered here, and of course, not a single one has returned alive. It's a shame that most of their weapons were melted by the 116 tentacles on the 3rd path, rendering them useless. If it were Renee, she could have handled them without causing any damage. Renee was extremely regretful. After all, luring adventurers here was only meant to collect the spoils of war from them. I didn't think they'd all choose the 3rd path and have their gear ruined by those tentacles. Devourer, who had been in his ancient monster form, heard the maid say this. His body gradually shifted, finally taking human form. Devourer placed his hand on Renee's head and stroked it gently, encouraging her. Well, if it were you, you certainly could have done it. Excuse me, but we're here for a meeting, right? Or did we just come here to play? This voice belonged to Patrick, the guardian of the 2nd gate. The awkward atmosphere of standing near those 2 makes my teeth fall out, and it's not just my teeth that are falling out. Even my skull is falling apart. Patrick's joke was so dry that no one bothered to laugh. Renee immediately brought the other 2 back to the main topic of today's meeting. Speaking of the issue, the 116 tentacles at the right gate were severely injured. Devourer yawned, looking uninterested. Don't worry, the regeneration of those tentacles is top-notch. If the situation isn't stable, we can just watch over it for a short while and find another guardian. Boss, can you find 2? I want to retire too. Patrick was extremely excited, but this request was immediately rejected by Devourer. Patrick was destined to be a slave for Devourer his whole life. He couldn't escape. The problem here is, while the 116 tentacles recover, they must change their assignments to protect all 3 paths. After all, the news that the 3rd path is about to be conquered will spread quickly. Humanity will soon send new raid parties to enter the dungeon through that path. Devourer thought for a moment and decided on a solution. Renee, who had been guarding the left entrance, will now move to the right, and meanwhile, Patrick will take her place. Because if humanity realizes Renee has switched spots, they will redirect their efforts there. If we do that, we'll be able to fend off those 2 waves of attacks. Devourer clapped his hands, feeling his idea wasn't bad at all. Wait, boss, what are you going to do if the humans go into the middle path? At this question from Patrick, all 3 fell into contemplation. Devourer suddenly felt very embarrassed by his loophole-filled plan. No choice then. If that happens, let them come straight to me. Patrick silently criticized his boss's terrible plan. Meanwhile, Renee chirped that the plan was perfect. Being a total simp really has no cure even in another life. All right, it seems the problem has been resolved. Now we just need to decide what to do with that sword. Sword? What sword? The sword the leader of the raid party was using. It's one of the 36 virtuous masterpieces. It's quite a famous sword among humans. Patrick rummaged through the pile of corpses for a while and pulled out a sharp blade. The sword that Renee is using is also one of those 36 masterpieces. Devourer evaluated it for a while. Indeed, humanity really got their hands on a good weapon this time. Patrick didn't know what to do with it. If he gave it to the monsters near the entrance, Then the humans would quickly steal it back. Letting humanity hold on to such a good weapon doesn't bode well for them. So Patrick cautiously held the sword out to Devourer. "You should take it, sir." "Patrick, don't you use a sword, just take it." "What, sir?" Patrick thought he had misheard and had to ask twice more to confirm. When he was sure Devourer was giving this to him, he smiled until the whole world lit up with vitality. "Haha, one of the 36 virtuous masterpieces is mine now. I've already collected 36 of the virtues that belong to me. What could be better than this to start the day? Since I've already given you that sword, you should tear up that resignation letter you've been hiding in your ribcage, Patrick." Ever since he got that sword, a dry old skeleton like Patrick has been absolutely brimming with life. Besides that precious sword, there was a haul of other spoils. As usual, Devourer ordered Renee to keep anything of value and use the useless gear to lure in the next batch of humans. But there was one issue that really troubled Renee. The magic gear they took from the humans wasn't of much use to the monsters in the dungeon, so she suggested to Devo that they separate them, extract the mana stones from the gear and sell them. That way they could make a fortune. "Oh, it's been a while since we've done that, hasn't it? Should we head to the human village?" Renee and Patrick both slammed the table at the same time and let out a loud, "Huh," because Daver was incredibly clumsy at disguising himself as a human. Right at that moment, he was even letting his tail show. Yet he was always itching to go to the human village, so as usual the task of posing as a normal human to handle the trade was assigned to Renee. However, things didn't start off very smoothly today because the mana stones that Renee brought to the shop were all rejected by the shopkeeper. Why? Renee gritted her teeth, her attitude turning extremely hostile and annoyed. The shopkeeper pulled out a sorcerer's stone and introduced it as a B-rank mana stone. Compared to the ones Renee brought, it was much smaller, which clearly showed the gap in grade between the two types of mana stones. "The stones you brought, kid, can't be used unless you're at the level of a royal sorcerer or a high sorcerer from the magic tower," the shopkeeper said, thinking for a moment before adding, "Well, some jewelers who are contracted with the royal palace or branches of the magic tower might be able to handle this." Renee started to weigh her options. The royal palace in the capital was too far, and she didn't want to go to the magic tower at all. But for the sake of her master Devourer, there was nothing Renee wouldn't dive into. So she gathered the mana stones on the table and left. "Take care, kid." As the shopkeeper said goodbye, he noticed a large mana stone she had left on the table, so he called out, "Hey, you missed a mana stone." "That's a tip. Thanks for the information, human." Renee had already left the shop. The shopkeeper kept watching her go, thinking, "What a strange kid. And she's a human too." Renee went straight to the nearest branch of the magic tower. When they found out she was there to sell mana stones, the guards escorted her directly to the top floor, where the head of the branch worked, a female sorcerer named Romus Amor. The moment she saw Renee, she felt a massive, impressive source of mana. The two exchanged casual greetings, and Renee introduced herself using a fake name, Zen. "I was going to ignore you because you're just a child, but the guard said you came here with a pile of mana stones. You must be aware of the magic tower's reputation, so I hope what you brought is high grade enough to be worthy of our status." Romus Amor's tone made it very clear she wasn't accepting any low-level mana stones. Renee opened her bag and dumped the pile of stones right out. "See for yourself." The shimmering light of those mana stones stunned Romus. It wasn't hard for her to see that these were all rank stones. And it wasn't just one, it was a whole pile. Where would a kid like Renee get this many? Looking closer at her, Romy noticed her silver hair. Coincidentally, this was the signature hair color of one of the 8 great noble families in the Empire. Thus, Roma secretly assumed that Renee was a runaway daughter from that family who had stolen the stones. She quickly withdrew her haughty attitude from earlier and asked to buy the entire lot. The price Romus offered was 50 gold coins per stone, and the special ones would be paid at a rate of 80 gold coins. Renee recalled the words of the shopkeeper from earlier. He said an average commoner would have to save for 10 years just to buy one such stone. And in the Empire, the average commoner family could only save 10 gold coins a year, so 10 years would be 100 coins. Clearly, Romus was lowballing her. "Human, messing with me will cost you your life." Romus was terrified by Renee's cold gaze. She quickly calculated in her head. It seemed this kid knew much more than she expected. Romus apologized hurriedly. Actually, the funds remaining at our branch aren't enough to buy all of these stones. Then buy as much as you can. Romus's guard brought out a chest full of gold containing 2,000 coins, but she still wanted all the mana stones. So, Romus haggled, offering to trade items of equal value for the rest. Are you sure about the value of those items? Renee asked suspiciously. Even so, the woman in front of her seemed rather cunning and they had to be easy to resell. As for that, you can rest assured. Please come this way and I'll show you the items. Romus led Renee to the treasure vault. There were indeed countless precious things here, but nothing caught Renee's eye, until Romus stopped in front of a glowing, heart-shaped red gemstone. This caught Renee's attention. What is this? It's called the Heart of Love. It's said to be a treasure. That can make love a reality. Hearing that it could make love a reality, Renee's eyes instantly lit up. Romus continued to explain that if you pour your mana into this stone in front of the one you love, the soul within the stone can bring eternal love to the two of you. Renee didn't think twice after hearing that. She decided she would take it, but Romus hesitated this time. She clutched the Heart of Love in her hands, treasuring it like a relic. I'm not sure about the other items, but this one is a bit difficult. It's said it can steal even an emperor's heart, so it's a priceless treasure. Even so, Renee wanted it no matter what. She gritted her teeth and pulled something out of her bag that shocked Romus even more than that pile of A-rank stones. How did you get this? Romus was panicked, and it was no wonder because she pulled something out of her bag that left Romus even more stunned than that pile of mana stones earlier. How did you get your hands on that? It's no wonder Romus was so shaken because that item. What Renee just pulled out was the precious sword she always carries with her, one of the 36 masterpieces of virtue. After Renee left, one of Romus's guards approached her looking extremely anxious. Guildmaster, did you really trade away that pink heart gem? So what if I did? Do you have any idea what that item actually is? If you just let that girl walk away like this, she's definitely going to die. That innocent noble lady traded her very own body to get the item she wanted. Don't worry about it. That unfortunate girl will die the moment the curse is lifted anyway. The person she likes will be gone too, so there won't be any evidence left behind. As expected, a seasoned merchant like Romus is far more cunning. Meanwhile, Renee is holding the pink heart gem as she walks away completely unaware of the dangers waiting for her. The next place she visits is Chai Castle. It is also one of the 7 great dungeons. Renee's purpose for coming here is to get a haircut. I'm sorry for coming here without notice. I still owe you so much. You're always helping me out. Oh, neighbors should look out for one another, right? Besides, I love seeing your lovely face, dear. The one cutting Renee's hair is a beautiful woman. She is the final boss of the Chai Castle dungeon. She goes by the beautiful name of Earthbest. Earthbest continues to cut Renee's hair while endlessly praising her beauty. This is also something that Earthbest is most jealous of regarding dwarves, a face that never ages. Earthbest is also very beautiful and youthful, but to achieve that she has had to bathe in people's blood, drink it, and use all sorts of human cosmetic products. That is why the Chai Mansion looks absolutely horrifying. Lady Earthbest, how do I look now? Of course, you are the most beautiful girl I have ever seen. I guarantee no one would dare reject a look like this. By the way, why are you dressing up like this? Are you planning to go confess your feelings? Earthbest was just teasing, but unexpectedly she hit the nail on the head. Renee clutches the pink heart gem in her hand, flashing a smile as radiant and bright as spring sunshine. Yes, I'm going to confess. Earthbest freezes solid for a few seconds. Renee has come here to get dolled up many times, but this is the first time she's ever heard about her having a crush. And on top of that, she actually wants to confess. So, who is it? Is it Sir Deaver? Earthbest freezes solid once more, her whole body trembling. Is this girl joking? How can she look so serious while saying something like that? But Renee insists firmly that she is being serious. At this point, Earthbest feels even more confused, because in her impression, Deaver is a giant pitch-black monster with many eyes, and most importantly, he is very ugly. She has no idea what a creature like that could possibly have. To make a cute and lovely girl like Renee fall for him. I like so many things about him. He is strong. Strong. Well, I think he's the strongest being in the world. But his laziness ruins everything. Renee doesn't deny those things, including the fact that the Devourer is terrifyingly huge, eats like an entire fleet, and sleeps all day long. And he snores, has no refinement, and lately he's even gained some weight. Goodness. But no matter what, you still like him, don't you? Yes, I really like him. Earthbest realizes that this girl is hopelessly love-struck, so she stops trying to advise her. She only truly hopes that everything goes well because Renee is worth so much more than that Devourer. If he rejects you, just come back here and we can badmouth him together. Thank you so much, Lady Earthbest. Renee holds the pink heart gem in her hand, overflowing with confidence about what's to come. I will definitely succeed. At the same time, in the royal palace in the capital city of Lias, a meeting is taking place involving the Dungeon Conquest Alliance. The main topic of the meeting concerns the fate of the Conquest Squad led by the hero Burn Histantis, the owner of one of the 36 masterpieces of virtue, which is now in the hands of Pachik. Some believe Burn and his entire Conquest Squad are dead, but others vehemently refute this idea. Didn't you say they could easily wipe out the Guardians? Their bodies haven't been found yet, so how can you be sure they are dead? Sir Burn would never lose to those monsters. But in reality, the ancient core dungeon isn't as complicated as everyone thinks. Conquering it could take place in 1 to 2 days, or the adventurers coming to conquer it could also be killed in that same time frame. It has been 2 days since they last made contact with Burn Histantis. Though I really don't want to admit it, it is almost certain that Burn is dead. Then what about his sword, one of the 36 masterpieces of virtue? The communication magic was cut off ever since they approached the center of the ancient core. So unless when they can make it back from there, retrieving that sword is impossible. The whole room falls into deep contemplation. 2 schools of thought are put forward. One is to stop the conquest of that dungeon to preserve their forces. The other is not to give up, especially since Burn fought to the death to reach the deep center. So it is very likely the boss is injured too. That's right, he is. The hero Burn. Surely that boss must be injured, and the dungeon must also be undergoing reorganization, as we discussed. Shouldn't we regroup before it has a chance to heal, and then conquer this dungeon? But this isn't a simple matter. The Dungeon Conquest Alliance has lost one of the most valiant heroes of the royal family, along with that precious sword. But if they just sit here doing nothing, the royal family will turn their blades against them. And if they send a second team and they fail as well, then the leaders will surely be dismissed. Besides, there's no guarantee that the previous team even managed to damage the dungeon boss. If that raiding party couldn't even leave a scratch on the dungeon, then what's the point of sending a second team at all? Finally, the head of the alliance hesitantly voiced his thoughts. Conquering the ancient core is impossible. Just then, a voice rang out from behind him, a mocking laugh from a young man. How curious. Why would you think that personally, I think conquering that dungeon is quite easy? The person who arrived was from the Royal Magical Research Association, proving that the royal family has begun interfering in this matter. After these people appeared, the entire hall became extremely tense. Naturally, they didn't come with good intentions. That young man didn't hesitate to use the harshest words. To blame the alliance, claiming their stupidity led to the sacrifice of a great hero. And you even lost a precious masterpiece of the king's virtue to the enemy. But if I kill everyone here who will cooperate with the Empire's other raiding parties, I wonder. Therefore, His Majesty has made a proposal, so that you may live go and conquer the ancient core once more. It sounds easy, but the people here are all less capable than Burn Histantis. He couldn't do it, so how could they Nifriam? The young man uttered not too much, not too little, just one word that made everyone stir. What is Nifrim? If I'm not mistaken, that's a solution with many defects, isn't it? It's not a defective product. It was extremely successful. Burn Histantis and his team couldn't survive. Is it because they were weak? Or because they were reckless? Naturally, it's neither. Then why does no one know the answer? The atmosphere in the room was deathly silent. Because there is one thing Lord Burn and his team lacked, and that is Nifrel. Open your eyes wide and see how successful this raid will be. At this moment, Devourer, deep in the dungeon, sneezed so hard, his soul almost left his body. Suddenly, he felt an ominous feeling as if a great storm were coming. Devourer sneezed again, transforming directly from his human form back to his original state. Damn it, did I catch a cold? Devourer truly just wanted to lie down and rest, but out there humanity could enter the dungeon again at any moment, so he was forced to patrol the entrance. If he slacked off, he would definitely get a beating from Patrick. Even though Devourer is the true master of this dungeon, every time Patrick loses his temper, he's scared out of his wits. First, Devourer checked the pile of tentacles injured by the raiding party. Sure enough, they were all seriously wounded. But even as the master of this place, Devourer couldn't intervene in healing them himself. He glided over to another room where the core body was located. It's like the heart and brain of those tentacles. Even if beaten black and blue, as long as the core remains intact, they can still survive if supplied with enough nutrients. Devourer saw with his own eyes that the core was still doing fine and breathed a sigh of relief. Now he just had to wait for them to recover on their own. So the only problem is entrance number 3, where the bodies of the injured tentacles are currently unguarded. Devourer planned to go back and report to Patrick, and then sleep to shake off this cold. He'd probably get scolded, but whatever, that's fine. He was already used to it. As he turned, a dagger flew from behind, grazed past him, and buried itself straight into the wall. Garbage human, if you've already set foot in here, I will make sure you don't leave in one piece. Devourer's tail emerged. He was clearly in combat-ready state. But then, the owner of that voice spoke up again. Oh, it's you, Lord. I thought it was some crafty human. Who managed to sneak in here? Oh, it turns out it's Renee. I thought it was someone else. She apologized profusely, but what caught Devourer's attention was that her appearance was completely different from usual. He stared at Renee suspiciously. Renee, are you all dressed up today? You noticed I'm so happy, Lord. How does Renee look today? Look, 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 look. It looks like you're dressed up for a special occasion, doesn't it? Cold sweat ran down Devourer's face. Usually, Renee was always simple, wearing her maid outfit. To dress up like this today? Don't tell me she's planning to retire before Patrick does. If that happens, Devourer alone would be screwed trying to hold down the entire dungeon. A special occasion, you say? That's right. Renee twisted her long hair with her finger looking coy. Devourer became increasingly tense. Lord, could you spare Renee a little of your time? Devourer screamed internally. Anything is fine, just don't resign. Sure. Renee led the Lord to a private area where a table and chairs had been set up. She invited him to sit and then brought over hot tea. Devourer had no clue about Renee's maidenly heart. In his head, he had only one thought. Don't quit, don't quit, please don't quit. This place used to be a place only I knew about. But from now on, let's keep this between the two of us. Okay, my lorder. And, Lord Devourer, you've taken Renee in for 80 years now, haven't you? Do you still remember? Oh, wait. This looks suspiciously like a formal resignation letter. With a teacup halfway to his lips, Devourer freezes. He begins to recall the first time he met this girl 80 years ago, when thousands of dungeons were being devastated by the dungeon conquest fever. Back then, tens of thousands of people were scrambling to reach the ancient core. That was also when Renee earned her title and began climbing the ranks. That's right. You've endured so much hardship. By the way, is your right eye feeling any better now? You still remember Renee's eyes? Of course, I've always kept them in mind. I've been so happy to be by your side, protecting you, my lord, all this time. Hearing this, Devourer stiffens. She said she has been happy. What does that mean? Isn't that just something people say when they're saying goodbye? Does it mean she's not happy anymore and wants to quit? Devourer mentally screams in a panic. Don't quit, don't quit, don't quit. But what Renee says next is completely contrary to his thoughts. My lord, I love you. You. What? I love you. Renee repeats firm and unwavering. For the past 80 years, Renee has been waiting for this very moment. Devourer wags his tail frantically, not out of joy, but out of sheer confusion. This is the first time someone has confessed to him, and it's his loyal guardian of 80 years no less. What kind of awkward situation is this? Devourer scratches his head in embarrassment, not knowing where to begin.
Renee, thank you for telling me how you feel. But we are always teetering on the edge of life and death. We never know when we might get hurt or lose our lives. Surely neither
of us wants the other to live in solitude, right? It is clearly a polite rejection. Renee grips the fabric of her dress tightly. This response was entirely within her projected data, but the feelings she has cherished for 80 years are too deep to simply keep locked in her heart. Still hearing the rejection from Devourer's own lips, Renee finds it unbearable. Today she had made up her mind. At any cost. She had to be loved by her lord. She already has the love gem in her hand. With a forceful kick, she shatters the tea table, shocking Devourer. Renee will not bow her head anymore. Wait, Renee, calm down. With this, my wish will be granted, my lord. You just need to pour your mana into it. Our love will be eternal. The gem in Renee's hand emits a beautiful pink glow, but the moment Devourer sees it, his expression changes instantly. The atmosphere around them shifts. Devourer slowly reverts to his raw, monstrous form, his fury engulfing the girl before him. Renee, were you just trying to kill me? The love gem falls from Renee's hand, shattering into pieces, just like her heart. By the time Devourer regains his senses, Patrick is already laughing in his face. The situation earlier was so chaotic that he lost his reason. Devourer only remembers Renee losing her composure, and that strange pink gem which led him to believe she was trying to harm him. Devourer's body falls into a half-human, half-demon state, terrifying Renee, who drops the stone. She kneels before her lord. Her eyes remain fixed on the fragments of the stone she had traded her own weapons to acquire, now shattered. That's when Patrick arrives, but both Renee and Devourer are losing control. There is no other choice. He draws his sword and knocks her away. Only by keeping a distance can he protect Renee from the Lord in his current clouded state. Patrick, do you intend to kill me too? Devourer roars in fury. The memory ends there. Devourer is holding his head in agony. He remembers absolutely nothing and doesn't understand why he acted like that. What do I do now? I rejected that girl so rudely. She's definitely going to be furious with me. I guess I have to go find her and apologize, right? How can you even ask me such an obvious question, my lord? There is no denying that Devourer is one of the most powerful monsters in existence. But when it comes to social skills and behavior, he is beyond terrible. After hurting Renee like that, the thought of showing his face to apologize makes him shrink away. You should know how important she is to this dungeon, my lord. Patrick is right. From preparing meals for the boss, managing diets for all the monsters, cleaning and repairing the dungeon, setting traps, to recruiting new monsters, handling complaints from monsters, and managing the budget, all these tasks fall on Renee. Honestly, losing Renee would be worse than the dungeon being destroyed. Well, I know that, so please go find her, before it's too late. Even if you have to beg her, or kiss her boots, you must bring her back. Devourer, whose hands have been stained with the blood of many, has never faced such a difficult task, like this one, but he can't keep avoiding Renee like this. Patrick hands him a ring called Demira. This can help stabilize your mana. You don't need the details, just know that it's very expensive. Patrick means, you'd better not break it, because the mana flow in Devourer is so powerful that if he can't control it, it's very easy to fall back into the terrible state he was in earlier. Although he doesn't even know if this thing will actually work on Devourer, something is better than nothing. You prepared this so carefully. It's like you knew this would happen from the very start. That's creepy. Where did you get this ring? I picked it up off the floor, all right. After the two bicker for a while, Patrick doesn't forget the main point. Devourer only has 5 days round trip, because soon humanity will return here. With neither Devereaux nor Renee around, it's going to be really tough for Patrick to stop all those intruders. I don't know what will happen if humans reach that place, sir. 5 days. I can guarantee that place will stay safe for at least 5 days. Please remember that well. Then we'll return with Renee within 5 days after Devereaux has left. Patrick let out a heavy sigh. The situation seemed even more troublesome than he had imagined. He pulled a crumpled newspaper from his ribs, which contained information about a circular sword. It's called The Head Chopper, one of the 36 virtuous masterpieces currently up for auction. It looks like Renee sold it somewhere and bought back that rose quartz containing a demon inside. That was exactly what made Devereaux lose control, but he couldn't let him know that Renee had been tricked. Patrick could already imagine the scene if Devereaux found out. If that happens, it'll be the end of the world. Patrick flipped the paper over and saw a notice even more urgent. The Dungeon Subjugation Coalition is confident that in this raid, they will reach the relic core within 3 days.
Oh, great. Not now. Didn't I just promise the boss I'd protect this place for at least 5 days?
Patrick felt like he'd been struck by lightning. Damn it, my life is a mess. Meanwhile, Devereaux was lying exhausted on the ground. This was the second time he had randomly teleported to a location. But the real issue is, I keep ending up in the middle of nowhere. Let's try one more time. Devereaux pictured a location in his mind, the place where Renee had taken the mana stones to sell haste in town. The scenery shifted to a different place. Lowly humans, to think you could even climb your way up here. I suppose I must grant you little creatures a favor. How about a glorious death? That's hilarious. A demon being arrogant, huh? We are a seasoned subjugation team ranked 32nd in the entire kingdom. The elite mercenaries of the Tiger God Legion. Remember this name because soon enough, we will be famous across the entire continent. It seems to be a mercenary team here to raid an ancient castle. And the master of this castle is a beautiful female demon. She is the 17th descendant of the demon king Asmodeus Melzazelem Agria. Facing the arrogant humans demanding she step down from her throne, Agria had absolutely no patience left. You've had the honor of knowing my name. Now go die. The leader of the mercenary team didn't even flinch at her intimidation. He gripped his weapon and decisively charged at her. Agria twirled her weapon in her hands, creating a shield that blocked all of her opponent's attacks. Just then one of the other guys in the team rushed in to help. The more Agria looked at them, the more annoyed she got. Just a bunch of weak mercenaries daring to provoke her. You pathetic humans who don't know your place. I will turn you into ashes. A powerful stream of purple mana representing Agria's strength engulfed the entire room. It was like a raging fire. In a blink, it swallowed the mercenary team. Their horrific screams echoed out, leaving only the captain standing. Agria raised her staff again to cast a new spell. A blast of ice and snow formed and struck straight toward the captain, but he was quite agile. He managed to dodge it just in time. Do you think I'll just let you be, you witch? He grabbed a floor tile and threw it with all his might at his opponent, but it wasn't a magical weapon. Naturally, it couldn't hurt Agria. She cursed, stupid, and continued using her magic to condense ice bullets and fire them at the captain. She thought that was it. Everything was over. But just then, a shield appeared above him. Agria was extremely surprised. Didn't her mana fire just take out the mage in the group earlier? The captain rushed forward. It turned out the mercenary team's mage hadn't died yet, even though his condition wasn't looking too good. Agria was even more irritated. She wanted to get rid of these pests quickly. Her right hand clenched into a fist, Agria, and that captain simultaneously charged at each other like two arrows, flying in opposite directions at blinding speed. A massive shockwave occurred, causing the whole room to crumble and collapse. Rubble and debris flew everywhere. Both the captain and the demoness were knocked backward, but both could feel that the power that repelled them didn't come from each other. Agria quickly realized a third party had just appeared. The captain was also completely baffled as he hadn't received any intel that another subjugation team would be coming here. Agria struggled to stand up. Now she really started to worry. If the newcomers were stronger and also human, then they were in big trouble. If so, they would definitely breach the Demon King's stronghold. Just who on earth fell from the sky like that? Amidst the thick dust, a tall, thin silhouette gradually appeared. Hey, do you guys know which way to hasten town? Both Agria and the mercenary team shared the same expression. What the heck? A complete stranger just suddenly fell from the sky, hit them with a massive shockwave, and is asking, "What the hell?" Devereaux scratched his head lazily. "Hey, I was just asking for directions out of good faith." And his gaze fell upon Agria. "Hey, you can bring as many people as you want, but you won't be able to take me down anyway. You're pretty, but you sure have a bad temper." Devereaux realized. That bitcher, I mean. That demoness before him was a demon king. but Agria gave him a completely different feeling than any demon king he'd met before. Deveroth let out a long, weary sigh. Is this a generation gap? Am I really that old already? While he was lost in thought, a barrage of curses rang out from the other side. You bastard, you're going to pay. You'll pay dearly for daring to wreck my castle. Ha, let me show you how these wretches handle a fight. Just then, reinforcements for the mercenary group arrived, boosting both their strength and morale. The captain immediately ordered an attack, and Agria, pumped up, didn't hesitate to engage. Very quickly, both sides were tearing into each other again. Deveroth stood on the sidelines looking like he was invisible. He was completely ignored by everyone. Hey, wait guys! No one cared about what he had to say. Literally no one. Don't think your magic can scratch us, you low-life humans. Talking big, aren't you? We've got reinforcements now, don't be afraid. Go get them. Taste some pain, you filthy scum. Deveroth still hadn't given up hope. Could someone please just point me toward the town of Haston? Of course, no one bothered to pay him any attention. Debris was raining down everywhere. Deveroth sat in the middle of the rubble, starting to get annoyed. He had to find Renee soon, or Patrick would chew his head off. But wait. Deveroth realized he was terrible with directions. Even after teleporting several times, he still hadn't reached that town. And this lot, busy killing each other, clearly couldn't give him an answer anyway. Deveroth lazily stood up, intending to leave. But a mercenary suddenly shouted at him with a cocky attitude. Hey, you bastard! Why don't you get over here and help us out? Deveroth was already on edge, and hearing that, he just snapped. Shut it! His monstrous form began to shroud his body, accompanied by the release of a massive amount of mana. Deveroth's mana carried a suffocating pressure like darkness, beginning to swallow the mercenaries in the room whole. The scene quickly turned into chaos. Piercing screams were the only thing that stuck in Agria's mind. By the time she regained her senses, the entire mercenary squad of dozens had been completely devoured by Deveroth. He even let out a huge burp. That's amazing. You're so strong. Maybe you're even stronger than I am. Agria's eyes sparkled as she started trying to cozy up to Deveroth. I'm really interested in you. I want to learn more about you. Deveroth hadn't even had a chance to answer before Agria lost control and blurted out a barrage of questions. What's your identity? What was that huge black thing that just appeared? Where did you stuff it? Oh, and what's the secret to getting that kind of power? Deveroth put on a disgusted face. The generation gap really does cause so many problems. He hated kids, especially the pink-haired creature. With butterfly wings standing in front of him, Agria realized her rudeness at that moment. She quickly gathered herself and apologized to Deveroth. Then Agria used the most theatrical display possible. She introduced herself to him again. Let me introduce myself. I am the famous great and beautiful Demon King, the 17th descendant of Asmodeus Melgezaline Fargia. This flashy act of hers made Deveroth even more annoyed. But for the sake of politeness, he supposed he should introduce himself too. Right, Deveroth reluctantly wanted to give his name. But he quickly realized that wouldn't be good. If his identity were leaked now, the news that the Master of the Ancient Core had left the dungeon would spread everywhere in no time. Patrick definitely wouldn't allow that. Deveroth was afraid he'd get his head chewed off, so he decided to make up a fake name. I'm Swan du Runier. In Deveroth's mind, he pictured a guy with a sunny smile named Swan do Runier, 32 years old, currently single. But the more he heard that name, the more cringeworthy it sounded. Unfortunately, Deveroth's mind was completely blank. He couldn't come up with a more suitable alias. Can I call you Mr. Swando? If you want, sure, whatever. All right then, Mr. Swando, first off, thank you so much for saving me, even though it was a bit unnecessary. This kid was generally polite, a bit dramatic and a chatterbox though. Deveroth lost patience and waved his hand, telling her to talk less. But Agria's mouth wouldn't listen and kept running at full capacity. No, without your help I'm a bit embarrassed to admit it. But if you hadn't been there, I might have lost to their attack. So you did save me, but that doesn't mean I needed to be saved. Note the speech by the little demon king Agria has been shortened. 1,000 words later, Deveroth felt dizzy just listening. Finally, they got to the point. Agria said that since he saved her, she wanted to help him with something in return. Is there anything you want me to help you with? Yes. Deveroth answered quickly like a drowning man grabbing a straw. Do you know the way to Haston Town? Oh, Haston, huh? Seeing her reaction, Deveroth's heart blossomed like a spring flower. If Agria just told him the way to that town, then Renee could go home. But life isn't a dream, because right after that, Agria poured a bucket of cold water on him. So what's a Haston? The smile vanished from Deveroth's face. Damn it. This kid doesn't even know what the town of Haston is, let alone the way there. Wasted so much time here. In the end, I didn't get any useful results. Deveroth quietly considered whether he should just swallow this brat whole. Fine, whatever. Then where is the nearest human village? In the end, Deveroth still chose not to do it. She was after all a future sprout of the demon world, so he'd let her off the hook. About this, Agria did know the closest place was the city of Liège. Hearing that, Deveroth felt even more dizzy. In the end, the Devourer chose not to do it. After all, they're just young sprouts of the demon world, might as well spare them. Agria happened to know the closest location was the city of Liège. When the Devourer heard that, he was even more stunned. We've made it close to the royal capital, but the real issue is, if we actually go, traveling by human carriage from Haston to Liège takes about 2 months. Is something wrong, Sir Swando? Is there a problem? Oh, that's way too far, Devar finally gave up. Too far, I see. So you want to get to a distant place? Well, what about using a teleportation wheel? What's that? You don't know. Devourer really didn't know. Agria was so happy to finally find something she knew that Sir Swando didn't. So she eagerly explained a teleportation wheel is something that humans created using magic and alchemy. Right now, this device can teleport people through space. As far as she knows, it's currently located in the capital Liège. Agria was so dedicated she led Devourer all the way there, even though he wasn't sure if Renee was actually in the capital, but any lead he could find was worth it. Agria knew Devourer was searching for a girl with silver hair, so she promised to help him with all her might. But aren't you the Demon King? What about your palace? Are you worried about me? Don't bother, Agria said with a mischievous smile. I am the Demon King, born in this ultimate body to rule. That palace doesn't matter, because wherever I am, that place becomes the demon realm, and every demon around is my soldier. Devourer pondered for a moment. In other words, this brat could summon demons at will. That was a truly terrifying power. That's right. I can summon demons at will, but I've never actually tried it before. Figures a kid is still a kid, completely unreliable. Agria saw the look of contempt on Devourer's face and shouted to defend herself, insisting that since her father could do it, she surely could too. Besides, that palace was completely trashed by Devourer anyway. It was uninhabitable, so her leaving the palace to wander around with him wasn't exactly unreasonable. Enough chit-chat. Agria went back to the main point, gathering information on Renee for Devourer, but he kept having a gut feeling that hanging out with this kid would only lead to trouble. Don't overthink it. We'll deal with whatever comes our way. The first place Agria led Devourer to was a tavern. Seeing the beer-soaked room before him, he confirmed it. The biggest piece of trouble right now was definitely Agria. Ugh, we have such a long road ahead, why waste time here? Agria, meanwhile, lifted a beer mug, downed it in one gulp, and let out a long, satisfied, "Ah! It's been so long since I've had some booze. This feels so heavenly. I guess you don't really understand the human world, do you? Taverns are the best places to find useful information." Seeing Devourer looking at her with a suspicious gaze, Agria continued to justify herself. Just try looking around and listen in. Every story here is valuable information you can't get anywhere else. Devourer looked around at all the drunken brawlers, but what caught Agria's eye was something else. It was a bulletin board filled with various flyers and notices. Devourer walked over to take a look. The first thing that caught his eye was a list of subjugation teams currently active in the dungeon. This information served to prevent too many teams from entering the same dungeon at once, as that would affect the loot split. On this topic, Agria had nothing but contempt for humanity, because she knew that the more people you had, the higher the success rate, but humans driven by greed chose to go in small groups like moths rushing into a flame. Forget it. Regardless, this is a good thing for us. Us? Why us? Agria quickly noticed something strange in Devourer's phrasing. Are you a demon in the dungeon too? Devourer was hit right in the heart. Sweat started pouring down his face. Damn it! Why is this kid suddenly so sharp? Agria kept pestering him, but he didn't want outsiders to know too much, so he just brushed it off. Agria saw that Devourer was firm about not talking, so she didn't press further. Devourer's gaze scanned the board quickly, and he ran into another notice. On it was the name of his dungeon. Luckily, at this moment, the list for that dungeon was empty, which meant they still had time to go look for Renee. What are you looking at? Let me see. Devourer handed the paper he was reading to Agria. She let out an "oh," seeming very interested in the ancient core. You know about this dungeon too? Devourer asked casually. But that simple question accidentally flipped the switch on this chatterbox. Agria went on and on about the ancient core, saying it was one of the 7 great dungeons, the dream of every demon. The ruler of this dungeon is the master of creation, the guardian of God, the punisher of those blinded by greed, the supreme being of all demons in this realm. Agria spoke about Devourer with eyes sparkling like stars, completely unaware that the person she admired so much was standing right next to her. You know what? The dungeon I've always dreamed of is that ancient core. I want to become stronger because if I get stronger in the future, I might be able to meet Sir Devourer. Devourer really wanted to say that she was talking to that very guy, but of course he couldn't. He just offered a few vague comments to go along with the kid's enthusiasm. The Devourer really wanted to say that she was talking to that very guy, but of course he couldn't. He just had to mutter a few vague words to play along with the little one. After that, Agria started talking about her father again, saying he was incredibly strong, a true demon king worthy of that noble throne. Sadly, humanity had someone even stronger than Asmodeus. The one who ended the life of that majestic demon king was a young hero named something like Burn or other. So he's the hero who defeated that demon king. I really don't want to run into him at all. Devolver patiently humored Agria, though he couldn't believe the person sitting in front of him was the same one who had devoured the young hero who killed her father in a single yawn. As Agria kept talking, she grew contemplative. She didn't want to spend her whole life managing a dungeon like her father did. Her true desire was for the people of the demon realm to be able to build their own dungeons. That was the drive that pushed Agria to become stronger. So, my lord, don't you think that's amazing? For the first time, Devolver didn't find Agria annoying. Ah, youth is truly a fine thing, always. Well, full of dreams and ambitions. It reminded him of his younger self. Just like Agria is now, he was full of vitality and conviction. Devolver once led a mighty army dominating the continent. He tried to master every bit of knowledge in this world. He strove to learn more than anyone else. Devolver also helped those in need because they moved his heart. Many, many times, Devolver gave them his all, but in the end he realized everything was futile. Now the Lord Devolver has only one goal: to sleep all day. A noble dream, kind of like mine. And I suppose it's like yours too, Agria. Agria, having drunk her fill, slumped over onto the table after a while. A second later, she started snoring away. With no other choice, Devolver had to rent a room and carry the girl upstairs. But because of that, he didn't notice that someone had gone to the information board to change the conquest mission. This should have been posted yesterday, but the tavern owner had forgotten, and the content of the new notice was something Devolver really didn't want to see: the 7 great dungeons, the ancient core. Conquest teams participating Femor, under the command of Femor Zu-Belai, consisting of 31 members. Team leader Nifrium. Conquest deadline 72 hours from the time of this notice. The next morning, Agria woke up feeling dizzy, her head pounding like a hammer. Devolver was yawning widely as well. When he saw Agria's appearance, he was so startled he tumbled backward. "My lord Swando, why are you so jumpy? Is my eyesight failing me? Why do you look like a kid?" I'm not a kid." "So like a teenager then?" Agria, too embarrassed to stay calm, started pummeling Devolver's face with her fists. He didn't fight back, because he was still surprised that after just one night of sleep, Agria had shrunk into a child like this. But as she punched, kicked, tugged his ears, and pulled his hair, she explained that she hadn't actually shrunk. The appearance Devolver saw yesterday was created using magic. That way, when facing humans, Agria wouldn't be looked down upon. Her current form was her true self. It was a transformation spell. It allowed the user to temporarily take on their future appearance. In other words, when I grow up, I'll be just as stunningly beautiful as I was yesterday, you know. Agria tilted her head back and laughed heartily. Devolver was speechless. It seemed this girl wasn't just troublesome and fickle, but also a narcissist. He sat on the floor to be at eye level with Agria and looked seriously at the child in front of him. Are you clear now, my Lord Swando? I am not a child. Yeah, he replied, not sounding sincere at all. That's not the point. The point is we have to go buy you new clothes first, Devolver said with a sigh, because right now Agria looked like she was swimming in her parents' oversized clothes. At the same time, in the Haston Count's territory, the conquest team for the ancient core, having departed from Liège, had arrived. They demanded that the Count immediately open the city gates to welcome them. This made Itak the Count and Lord of the Haston region absolutely furious. Normally, for dungeons above rank B, the intrusion required the permission of the local lord. But this time, that conquest team arrived without any prior notice, and even demanded that the lord personally come out to welcome them. This was clearly showing him no respect at all, but most of them were members of the Third Eye, an association belonging to the royal family. This conquest team was also acting under the royal family's orders, so no matter how angry he was, Itak could do nothing else. Do you think this conquest team can reach the center of the ancient core? The maid beside him heard this question. She just stayed silent and shook her head. That was truly what Itak was thinking too. This army only had 31 people, and their leader was Nifriam, a name he'd never heard of. Itak couldn't guess what the Third Eye and the royal family were thinking, but he worried that if they kept conquering the ancient core in such a half-hearted way, Haston would soon fall into crisis. Itak started considering whether he should request a more powerful conquest team, and his maid suggested the Twin Wings Magic Tower. This was the very branch where Renee had previously sold mana stones, but how would an outsider like Itak know that he only knew that recently? The Twin Wings Magic Tower had collected a large amount of high-grade mana stones of unknown origin. Even though he didn't know the deep-seated reason, Itak speculated that this was laying the groundwork for a dungeon conquest. After all, the Twin Wings was a rank of magic tower. With that many high-quality mana stones, conquering the ancient core was entirely possible. Thinking of this, Itak made his own decision. Take the commission to the Twin Wings Magic Tower. Promise them that I will give them plenty of money and fame. Therefore, go conquer the ancient core before those Third Eye people can set foot there. But this wasn't easy to carry out, because right after that, the door to Itak's office was kicked open. Are you the Lord Itak? Who are you, Nifriam? Since you wouldn't open the gate even though we called many times, I took the liberty of letting myself in. Nifriam didn't care about Itak's status at all, sitting directly down on the sofa nearby. When the Lord questioned why they had come without asking for permission, he immediately put on an incredibly menacing look. Haven't you already received the documents from the royal family? So is there any reason why we couldn't come here, huh? Hey Nifrim, what's with that look on your face? Smile, we're guests here after all. By the way, I'd like something sweet. Get me some chocolate. The green-haired one seemed a bit more cordial, but in reality she was giving orders to Itax. Even though he was furious, these people were sent directly by the royal family, so he couldn't touch them. Itax had to swallow his anger and order the maid to prepare the food as requested while he sat down opposite the two of them. The paperwork was only sent here a day ago. You two are fast. When are you leaving? We originally planned to leave today, but because something came up unexpectedly, we're leaving tomorrow. Is that all right? Itax wanted to stall for time so he could send a commission to the Twin Wings Magic Tower, and so he nagged Nefrem and his subjugation squad to stay for a few days until they were in the best physical and mental state, but Nefrem flatly refused. Forget it. If you don't care about us, that's fine. We'll just stop by the Twin Wings Magic Tower first. He left immediately. Why are you going there? Do you have acquaintances there? That's not the reason. I'm thinking of going there to wipe them all out. Nifrim's savage expression made Itax's skin crawl once again. He couldn't understand why the man had such thoughts. As if sensing the Lord's anxiety, Nifrim explained right away that the security in Haston was notoriously loose. In a place like this, Using magic to eavesdrop is as easy as pie. The entire plan about inviting the Twin Wings magic tower to obstruct the Three-Eye subjugation squad that Itax had calculated had been overheard by them completely. We were ordered by the royal family to come to this border to carry out the subjugation. Do you think we'll just obediently give up? We will eliminate anyone who causes trouble. I apologize. I won't request any more subjugation squads. Leave whenever you want. Under the pressure from Nifrim, Lord Itax had to concede. This bastard was clearly a human, yet his intimidation factor was just as terrifying as a demon's. Meanwhile, Patrick was in the dungeon training his arm strength with some mana dolls made of clay. With the sharp intuition of a combatant, he could sense that the enemy's time to strike was very close, over here. Following Agria's guidance, the Devourer finally managed to reach the city gate. He told the guards that he wanted to use the teleportation wheel, but they replied that it was still a long way off. Specifically, it was located at the fortress to the right of the royal palace, and to get there, the Devourer would have to pass through 3 more layers of city walls. About how long does it take to get there? The Devourer asked, suspiciously, because hearing that already felt wrong. Let's see. If you walk, it'll probably take a week at the very least. A week? The Devourer almost screamed, startling the guard. This isn't good. At this rate, not only would he not find Rena, but even Patrick would probably have left home by then. The Devourer felt like he had fallen into a deep pit of despair. Agria suggested that they could use a flight spell, but this wasn't feasible at all, because if they used mana to cast spells, they would be detected by humans. Furthermore, the flow of mana in the Devourer's body was too vast. If released, without control, a disaster would happen. Just when both the Devourer and Agria were scratching their heads, a savior appeared. Are you two in some kind of trouble? Sorry for eavesdropping, but it seems like you two are trying to get to the teleportation gate, right? Yes, but who are you? I'm the pilot of this air carriage. The old man pointed to the carriage behind him. It was pulled by a creature with a strange shape. It had wings on its back. He introduced it as a 4th-generation failed homunculus, the result of an artificial angel production project launched by the Empire. Even though it looked a bit gross, the creature was very strong, obedient, and most importantly, it could fly through the air. Unfortunately, it had been discarded because it couldn't achieve the original goal of destroying churches. So have the humans' homunculus experiments ended? Agria wondered. Not a chance. This empire will never give up on such power, but that's not really important right now. Agria inspected the carriage for a while. It seemed truly sturdy. The old driver also explained immediately that if they traveled using this vehicle, it would only take 3 hours to reach the teleportation gate, plus an hour to pass through security, so it would take 4 hours in total. And the cost was 8 ounces of gold for the trip. The Devourer's jaw dropped when he heard that. 8 ounces of gold, that's 800 ounces of silver. Yesterday, staying at the tavern only cost them 8 ounces of silver, but this is a total ripoff. I'm sorry, sir, I don't have that kind of money. Agria looked confused, but then she thought, do you think I do? Devro started scratching his head in frustration. Suddenly, he felt something in his pocket, opened it up, and found a note left by Patrick. To my clumsy boss, there will come a time when you'll be grateful for me. Inside, there were a few gold coins. Thanks to them, they could finally get their trip underway. As they sat in the flying carriage, Agria began to wonder who could have given Devro so much money. My subordinates from my secret dungeon, he replied. Oh, right. I forgot you're literally a dungeon monster. Then, why are you wandering around out here? I got kicked out, okay. Are you happy now? Devero didn't want to get into it, so he just made up a random excuse to satisfy the brat's curiosity. So your subordinate was also kicked out, just like you? Huh. Devourer, clearly annoyed, snapped. Why are you asking so many questions? You're just jealous, aren't you? Even though you've been exiled, you still having a subordinate who cares for you that deeply. I wish I had a companion like that too. I wish I could live a life like yours, having someone who cares about you and you caring for them in return. What could be happier than that? Agria switched to a serious, somber tone. This forced the Devourer to reflect deeply as well. A few hours later, they arrived at the carriage wheel station, but one disaster followed another. It was currently forced to stop operations to ensure safety for the auction, and it wouldn't be running again until 8 o'clock. If you're interested, you can participate in our auction. The receptionist handed Devourer a flyer. Inside was information about the auction. It was being held for a single item, the beheading claw, one of the 36 masterpieces of virtue recently discovered. It felt like a lightning strike to Devourer. This was Renee's weapon. There was no mistaking it. In this world, there is only one unique weapon like this. So why is it in the hands of humanity? Could something have happened to Renee? Devourer felt it was utterly absurd. Renee was incredibly strong. Even the bosses of the other 7 dungeons had to be wary of her. She wasn't just anyone. Renee was known as the maid who wields the sword. So what reason could there be for humans to threaten her life and seize the beheading claw? Devourer began to recall the last time he saw Renee. Her attire at that time seemed to have no place left to hide her weapon. So when facing humans, was she really all right? Unlike Patrick, who could handle himself even without a sword. Just that Patrick was even stronger with a sword. But Renee was different. If the maid who wields the sword is disarmed, what is she even left with? The more he thought, the more tangled Devourer's mind became. Meanwhile, Agria was panicking because Swando's complexion looked so terrible right now. Devourer clenched his fists, his body beginning to transform as his mana surged uncontrollably. Slowly losing control, he thought, so Renee, my subordinate, has she been murdered by those lowly inferior humans? The sight of Devourer's transformation sent the receptionist stumbling backward, unable to hide his terror, screaming, "Stay away, you monster!" But Devourer didn't care, for at this moment, his remaining reason was no longer enough to control his body, or that surging torrent of mana. The only thought in his head was if Renee had truly been murdered by common humans, then it was only natural for him to slaughter every single one of these bastards here. "Swando!" Agria shouted, using her tiny hands to grab Devourer's arm. "Swando, calm down, snap out of it. What the hell is going on? Answer me right now." Devourer turned and gave her a look that wasn't exactly friendly. "I will only say this once. The beheading claw, one of the 36 masterpieces of virtue, is something that only has one single unique copy in the entire world, right? As far as I know, that is correct." "Then why would you ask that all of a sudden?" "Because I've been searching for it for a long time. It belongs to a friend of mine. I have to find it. You don't need to help me anymore. Thank you for the journey thus far." Devourer bluntly shoved Agria's hand away. The last shred of his reason told him he shouldn't hurt this girl. "Now you know the way to hasten, so from this moment on, I sincerely advise you to stay as far away from me as possible." But Agria was not a child who was easily obedient like that. "Swando, is that the friend?" "Aha, you were referring to a demon in the form of a silver-haired woman, a warrior who uses the beheading claw, the maid who wields the sword, Miss Renee, isn't that right?" Devourer didn't expect this kid to suddenly be so sharp, but he didn't want Agria getting too involved in his business, however glaring or threatening her. Using that terrifying voice no longer worked on the girl, because Agria already knew Devourer's true identity. After all, Renee's reputation was immense. If Devourer had confirmed himself that Renee was his friend, then realizing he was the master of the ancient core wasn't difficult at all. "Fine, I am the Devourer," he admitted, but those words didn't even reach Agria. "Swando must be the subordinate of the ancient core master Devourer. Isn't that right? Is this kid born dim-witted, or does she practice being this dense Devourer?" sighed in frustration, deciding to just let it go without defending or refuting anything else. "I don't know what you're thinking, but it sounds dangerous, so I'm going to help you and you can't refuse. Don't worry from now on, you've got me to help you." Devourer suddenly discovered that aside from being a bit ditzy and oblivious, this kid was actually pretty reliable. And so the next day at the auction, Agria appeared with the look of the first time Devourer saw her. She even tried to dress and groom herself meticulously to look like a high-born lady. Agria and Devourer went to the back entrance of the auction. Here, it was deserted with only a single guard at the gate because all the guests were attending through the main entrance. "We're here to attend the auction. Can we go in through this entrance?" Yes, this way. But first I need to know your identities. What are your names?" "I'm Agria from the male's family. And this is Swando, my servant." The guard checked the guest list but didn't see her name. That was to be expected. Agria wasn't nervous at all. She feigned asking Devourer if he had the invitation letter, and while the guard was still puzzled that no invitation letters had been sent out for this auction, Devourer delivered a thunderous punch. "Here's your invitation, an invitation to your next life." After dealing with the guards, Devar turned to Agreya and glared. He couldn't stand seeing her in that polished grown-up appearance. In his eyes, she was still just a child. "Stop dressing like that. I'll say this one last time, I'm not a child." "Yeah, whatever. Let's go." "Take that back." Meanwhile, the Renee that Devar had been desperately searching for was hiding in another dungeon, none other than Che Castle. She lay curled up on her bed, tears streaming down her face. It's over. Renee can never go back to the ancient core again. Scenes from 80 years ago flooded back into Renee's memory. It was when the Grappenia forest was burned down by humans. The area was protected by a spirit named Grappenia, also known as the Earth Witch of the ancient core dungeon. She used the forest as her natural fortress. Back then, Devar had slaughtered the arsonists in a brutal massacre hoping to impress her. That was also the first time he met Renee. She had been captured by humans and locked in a cell. Even though she had nothing to do with the forest burning, the tiny creature in that dark dungeon had caught his eye. Renee was so small and pathetic back then. Given Devar's nature, he should have killed her too, so there would be no witnesses to the massacre. But for some reason that day, Devar just used his power to shatter the cell. "You're free now. Go wherever you want. However, I'm not going to help you escape from this place. Whether you want to die locked up here or find a way out, that's your decision." At the time, Grappenia was looking for a maid named Lelo. Since there was no one else around except Renee Devar, simply assumed she was the one. After breaking the cell door, he left immediately. After all, that was the extent of Devar's curiosity-driven mercy. Only Renee remained sitting there in a daze. Lelo was the name of a maid serving the master as well as a title for the most talented maid. The Lelo that Devar was looking for was a head maid, whereas this tiny girl had never been called or referred to by that name, since a thing like her didn't have a name. But it was because of that event on that day that a seed was planted in Renee's heart, one that started to take root and sprout over time. Currently, Renee was still hiding in a daze at Che Castle. Urzbach really wanted to persuade her, but Renee was determined to refuse to return to the Hellcore. Urzbach didn't want to force her at all. She just knew that with the temperaments of Devar and Patrick, they were definitely searching for Renee everywhere. If they found out she had been deceived by humans and ended up like this, a bloody revenge would surely follow. "If you're going to live like a ghost, then cover your tracks. It doesn't have to be perfect. Being clumsy is fine. Patrick will understand your intent and handle it." Urzbach also revealed that Newframe's expeditionary force was coming and the ancient core would be busy dealing with them for a few days. Hearing this, Renee instinctively curled her hand into a fist. "My lady," Urzbach said. Renee decided to go somewhere far away to catch a breath of fresh air. Urzbach wanted to stop her because she noticed Renee's right eye was getting blurry, so she wasn't comfortable letting her go alone. But Renee firmly insisted she was fine and just wanted to retrieve her sword before leaving. Meanwhile, after entering the auction, Devar continued to use force on the guards to interrogate them about the severing claw. Through them, he learned that this weapon was sent from the magic tower of Wings in Haston Town. After getting the info he needed, Devar let the guy go and left with Agreya. "Damn it! That bastard almost killed me. I'm just a guard. What did I do wrong? Go to hell, you jerk!" The guard thought Devar had gone far away, so he started cursing under his breath. He didn't expect that just a moment later. Devar appeared right behind him like the Grim Reaper. "That's right, you didn't do anything wrong. You were just unlucky enough to annoy me." Devar's body began to transform and a terrifying amount of mana radiating out. The guy realized too late that he was a monster. Devar had always despised humans. They called slaughter by prettier names like expedition or conquest, then used those excuses to swarm into dungeons and kill without feeling a shred of guilt toward innocent creatures. Did they do anything to deserve death? No. And I am the same. Because you are human, my enemy. That is the reason why I do this. As for the fate of that guard, everyone knows how that ended. At the same time, inside the auction hall, someone had bid 35 billion gold, and it quickly skyrocketed to 70 billion. Gin and Gazo, the commander and deputy commander of the Black Tiger Legion, were in charge of auction security. Seeing that everything was going smoothly, they were planning to go grab a bite to eat. But they didn't expect a sudden disaster. Just as the auctioneer announced he would present the third card to close the auction behind his back, a mass of tentacles suddenly appeared and wrapped tightly around him. "Who said that I am the one who will end this auction?" Both Gwyn and Gazo were terrified by the sudden turn of events. On the stage, Devar had appeared in his terrifying half-human, half-demon form. "You're all here to buy the Severing Claw, aren't you?" Gwyn was one of the Empire's 3 heroes, along with Byrne and one other. But after the first expedition to the Hellcore, Byrne had sacrificed himself. The public condemned it heavily because it was a self-serving expedition, and this condemnation inadvertently put immense pressure on the 2 remaining heroes. Even so, Gwyn has always been wholeheartedly dedicated to protecting the people and loyal to her country. The moment she saw Devourer kill that auctioneer, she wanted to charge in and fight immediately. Gazo, being the more level-headed one, quickly held Gwyn back. She was perhaps too impulsive, failing to gauge the true danger of her opponent. But Gazo had already seen it. The existence of the one on that stage went far beyond mere danger. It was clearly destruction itself. If Gwyn had rushed in, it would have been certain death. Devourer approached, gripping the blade. Though he didn't want to admit it, this item radiated an aura far too familiar to its master. It clearly wasn't a fake. This only confirmed his certainty that Renee had been attacked by humans and stripped of her weapon. "I'm very sorry, but this item already has an owner, so I'll be taking it back to its rightful master." Despite the apology, there wasn't a hint of sincerity in Devourer's tone. It even carried a touch of murderous intent. The guests at the auction couldn't help but feel it. They were both terrified and panicked. They kept screaming for the guards to stop Devourer. "I will tear you all to pieces and bury your corpses along with this blade." Devourer growled every word of his threat, and this was no mere intimidation. He truly intended to bury this entire hall, along with Renee. "Do you think I'll let you do that?" Launching himself from the crowd, Gwyn used her maximum speed to charge straight at Devourer. He silently assessed his opponent. Fast as a squirrel indeed. Smooth movements, excellent combat gear, but unfortunately you lack exceptional talent. The proof was that Devourer just stood there. Gwyn didn't land a precise hit to damage him, and she had no weapon other than those gloves. A brutal thought flashed through her mind. "Devourer, in this case I should tear your arms off and then grind them into little pieces, shouldn't I?" To be honest, Devourer actually held this person in fairly high regard. At least compared to that hero Byrne, she was certainly no less capable. Gwyn unleashed her ultimate move. Crush, channeling all her strength into the punch. Devourer raised his bare hand to block it, and the result was, as his hand collided with those hardened gloves, he was sent flying. The scene fell into chaos. Bricks and stones shattered and flew everywhere. Gwyn waited tensely, but unfortunately, Devourer didn't die. "Ha ha ha! So you're not an ordinary human, are you?" As soon as his voice rang out, the hair on Gwyn's skin stood on end. The crush move that she had just used. It was a finishing move that had annihilated a dungeon boss without leaving a trace. Even the Apocalypse clone, said to withstand 3 blows of any kind, was destroyed in just 1 hit by that skill. And yet Devourer was still alive, and even seemed perfectly fine. Gwyn stared fixedly at her opponent, his ferocious face, eyes sprouting from his cheeks, and that black energy swirling around his body. He didn't look human from any angle. She had suspected it from the start, but now she truly felt that Devourer wasn't just some ordinary monster. What kind of hellish thing is he? Gwyn was tense to the extreme, her eyes never leaving the opponent's movements. Devourer stood up, gritting his teeth together. Then the eyes on the left side of his face glowed. Simultaneously, his face revealed a wicked, incredibly savage smile. What a pity. Dark energy flooded the space. Gwyn stood rooted to the spot. It wasn't that she didn't realize what was happening, but the pressure Devourer exerted was so great that she was momentarily paralyzed. At that exact moment, Gazo ran over from afar like a madman. His eyes were filled with despair. "Damn it, don't get any closer. Stay away from us." The surroundings went deathly silent. "Lord Swando, are you all right?" Agria's voice pulled Devourer back to reality. The girl had been very worried, thinking that Devourer could not be safe after Gwen's attack. The situation just now was a total mess. Even he didn't understand how he remained intact, because Gwen's technique clearly wasn't something a normal human could unleash. It felt like it struck directly at Devourer's heart. It was even powerful enough to force him to reveal his true form. That was truly the worst-case scenario. Just imagining Patrick's face upon learning that Devourer's true form had been exposed gave him enough pressure to die. But luckily that didn't happen. Devourer had only been focused on taking Gwen's life, never paying attention to Gazo, who had evacuated all the guests in the hall, and in that final second, Gazo had cast multiple protection spells on Gwen, successfully getting her out of the attack that Devourer was about to unleash. Devourer would never forget those two faces. He offered a mocking smile. "You two are interesting." Gazo used teleportation to get Gwen out. The two landed in the middle of the street with a rather ungraceful thud. Passers-by saw Gwen and hurried to gather around. Her injuries were not light, so they hurriedly shouted for a healer. Gwen struggled to sit up with everyone's help. Never had she felt so humiliated. As a hero of the Empire, she had been defeated by an unknown monster in just one blow. If Gwen knew that the one who defeated her was the master of the Hellcore, she probably wouldn't feel so devastated. But she didn't know. She only thought Devourer was some small-time nobody, so she felt extremely resentful. Gwen's head throbbed like it was being hammered. The next thought that flashed through her mind was everyone in the room. The auction house is still safe, but what about Gazo? "Gazo, Gazo!" Gin muttered, her voice trembling as she looked around. It was so quiet. How could I have heard her reply? Gin silently thanked the heavens. Gazo was safe, and now standing right before her. If not for Gazo, this time next year would probably be the anniversary of my death, Gin thought. But very quickly she realized something was wrong. If you looked closely, Gazo's entire right arm had been severed. It was currently crudely bandaged, but blood was still oozing out. "Gazo, your arm! Don't worry, my life isn't in danger." Gwen hugged her comrade tightly. She burst into uncontrollable sobs. In that moment, she felt like the most pathetic hero in the Empire. Not only had she failed to stop the monster, but she had also caused her comrade to become disabled. "Gazo, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry," Gin continued. Even as she apologized, she couldn't stop her choked-up crying. In contrast, Gazo remained incredibly stoic, calling her commander by name. "Calm down, Gwen. You're the hero of the Empire, aren't you? Would a hero who cries her eyes out like this really deserve to be praised by everyone?" Then Gazo softened her tone as if soothing a child, while using her remaining arm to wipe away Gwen's tears. Perhaps Gwen didn't realize it, but Gazo did. The thing they had just faced was the owner of the ancient core dungeon Devourer. "Huh. What are you talking about? Stop joking. There's no way a monster like that could appear here." Gwen felt like she had just heard the most ridiculous and bland joke in the world. "I don't know the reason either, but I am certain it really is Devourer. That dark, cruel catastrophe that is the monster Devourer." The reason Gazo could be so certain was that during the fight, she noticed that on the opponent's feet there were still traces left by the hero burn. Furthermore, those marks, they were very fresh, likely from less than a month ago, and the only monster to have met the hero burn and survived was Devourer. "This is more serious than we thought, Gwen. If this keeps up, the Empire will collapse. If it really is Devourer, shouldn't we be trying even harder to stop him? This is humanity's territory. We have the upper hand." But Gazo didn't think that was a smart decision. Devourer was an existence with power beyond human imagination, and it was certainly not something that could be solved by the strength of Gwen or Gazo. Even both of them combined wouldn't make a dent, just like before. Gazo believed they couldn't beat Devourer right now. Therefore, the only solution is to return to the Demon Conquest Alliance, to ask for their support, and at the same time report it to the royal family. So I will act alone first, but in my current state, I cannot teleport both of us. So Gwen, please stay here." After saying that, Gazo used her healing powers to soothe Gwen's wounds, though it couldn't heal them completely. Therefore, before disappearing, she didn't forget to tell Gwen not to wander off and to wait for her there. As for Devourer, he was still very hesitant between two choices. One, let the two who escaped go and head straight to Haston. or two chase them down, and eliminate everyone to avoid the risk of his true identity being discovered. Devourer was so headachy that he paced back and forth, much to Agria's confusion. But after some deliberation, he made his final decision. In any case, he was safe now, and his scythe had been recovered. The main purpose of this trip was still to find Renee. He shouldn't waste any more time. Even if he didn't know her current condition, Devourer was determined. Even if Renee had been killed, he had to find her body. Get ready, Agria. Understood. What's wrong? Devourer noticed Agria looked somewhat restless. Mr. Swando, even though I witnessed your power at the Demon King's castle after this time, you seem even stronger than I imagined. Although you said you were a friend of Miss Renee's, you seem even stronger than she was. After all, who are you? Truly there is no most clueless, only more clueless. Even Gazzo had guessed Devourer's identity, yet Agria, who had been stuck to his side for days, didn't have a clue. Devourer gave Agria a light knock on the head. This kid is truly annoying. He promised that, when everything was over, he would tell Agria the whole truth. For now, let's get it done. Show them the power of a demon king, Agria. She nodded then. She appeared once again in that first form. With butterfly wings and demonic horns in Agria's hand was a glowing staff. Restructure. Agria raised her staff high. A purple light carried a stream of mana surging up into the sky. Immediately after, a massive explosion occurred. Its shockwaves spread throughout the entire city. Smoke and fire filled the air, and the people began to panic, not knowing what had just happened. This disturbance also caught Gwen's attention. She quickly realized that the explosion came from the direction of the auction house. Damn it, attacking in the heart of the capital. Do those damn monsters even care how many people are in the capital? Gwen staggered to her feet. She wanted to do something, but suddenly she remembered Gazzo's warning earlier that she must not wander around no matter what happened, and that she had to wait for Gazzo to return. Gwen's heart was torn apart. Just then, a small hand gripped her arm. Gwen looked down. It was a child. Big sister, my dad. My dad is in that direction. Gwen gritted her teeth. In that moment, she had made up her mind. She is the hero Gwen Historia, and she will not run from a monster like that, no matter how high a price she has to pay. Meanwhile, Devourer struggled to climb out of the rubble. Damn it. He had told Agria to erase all traces of them at the auction, but instead she directly used a large-scale reconstruction spell. That high-level magic created a massive explosion, then caused the entire ground to collapse, burying everything. Everything is settled now, right? It's all pretty much gone now, Agria said with a beaming smile. That spell really shouldn't have been used here. Could you please stop interfering with how I do things? We achieved our goal, didn't we? I finished them all off. Everything is finished neat and clean. What more do you want from me now? Devourer was speechless. It was indeed clean, but the aftershocks were way too big. He wanted to slip away quietly, but Agria was acting as loud as a beacon, practically shouting, "Here I am!" Truly trusting this girl with an important task was a mistake. But what's done is done. Now an even bigger mess is about to head their way. Do you still remember the way to the center to the teleport gate? Yeah, I remember it. Devourer was desperate to get to Haston immediately, but it was already too late. The heroes or guards or whoever would surely come swarming in any second now. At such a critical moment, Agria started questioning useless things. She knew Devourer wanted to go to Haston, but even now she didn't know where Haston was. Didn't you say you knew where the ancient core was? Yeah, I know. It's one of the 7 great dungeons I admire the most. That town is right nearby. Devourer gave Agria a mission: head to the teleport gate and defend it. Once he finished everything here, he would meet her there, because humanity had already gathered into a swarm blocking his path. Leading them was the Blue Crane Conquest Group, one of the 9 pillar noble houses of the Empire. Their leader was a one-eyed man who, after introducing himself, demanded Devourer reveal his name. Devourer cast his tired eyes over the opponent. There were so many of them. Humans always had to work in groups. He didn't understand why they were so obsessed with things like that. But when humans gathered together like this, they were truly annoying, especially since they were all people who had been trained with enough skills for monster conquest. At least there were no heroes like Byrne or Gwyn here. Devourer thought to himself, with this bunch of small fry, I probably won't have to waste much time cleaning them up. You want to know who I am? Let me think if I should tell you. Or not. Devourer flipped his right wrist. Mana began to flow out like a spring. I am your enemy. At the same time, at the ancient core, the conquest group led by Nifrel had begun to enter. Sylvia, Nifrel's confidant, suddenly noticed a strange problem. It was that when the team entered the first room, it was full of disgusting, filthy monster carcasses. But the second room they stepped into was far too clean. It was as if someone had already cleaned up in here. What do you all think about this? The other team members began to wonder. They all felt it was really hard to understand. There was no way Byrne's army would be free enough to fight and clean at the same time, and normal monsters weren't smart enough to do that. Hey, could it be that a highly intelligent monster did this? Wait, isn't it true that on the third path, Byrne's army, he has already destroyed everything up to the fifth room? That meant only the boss room was left. No way. Could a monster really clean up this whole place? What are you talking about? If. So why didn't it clean the corpses in the first room instead of here? Nifrel was furious because he realized his subordinates were starting to panic. This isn't a trap. It's just a way to disrupt the troops' morale. He waved his arms into the air, yelling almost like a madman. Monsters, quit playing games here. Are you trying to trick us? Responding to Nifrel was only the endless echo of his own voice in the cave. A long while later, a new voice suddenly spoke. You are all too noisy. It's making me exhausted and my joints are aching even more. I'm not trying to trick you. I just cleaned this place because it looked too messy. I figured people would come to conquer the dungeon, but you're even noisier than I imagined. How annoying. A pair of glowing eyes appeared at the end of the path. Nifrel immediately became highly alert, demanding Sylvia cast a spell. She raised her hand and a brilliant fireball flew toward the end of the tunnel. Finally, they were able to clearly see what the creature was. Too bright. Truly fools. You die in such numbers. Why must you keep throwing yourselves at this place? Nifrel gritted his teeth. He immediately recognized the opponent as the Night Patch. Initially, he had intended to prepare a grand introduction, but it seemed Patch's reputation wasn't bad since these humans recognized him the moment they met. Patch used a relaxed tone mixed with a bit of sarcasm and began to order the opponent. Calm down a bit. Don't be so tense. Lower your weapons, then we can... I talk. And you little mage girl don't hold such a stance. Also, you soldiers, back off a bit. I don't like crowds. Patch hadn't even finished speaking when the space rang with a whistling sound. It was Nifrel who had used all his strength to charge forward, gripping his daggers to strike at Patch. Patch gently raised his hand to block. How rude of you, humans. You haven't even greeted me properly. And you're already trying to attack me. Shut up and die! Nifrem roared, unleashing a massive wave of ice magic that crashed straight toward Patrick. Patrick just sighed as he dodged and parried. He had been fighting intruders for hundreds of years now. It was all so routine, so boring, it didn't matter who he was facing. In the end, Patrick was always going to win. The sound of clashing metal rang out continuously. Nifrem fought with a pair of short blades, but after a brief struggle, his weapons were knocked aside. Nifrem was gasping for air. That last flurry of attacks had drained him. Patrick looked at his own weapon, which had been sent flying, and let out an unimpressed, "Oh, you seem to have a different kind of strength than the others, don't you?" Without a second's pause, Nifrem frantically activated a barrage of power-up skills, stat boosts, damage buff speed arts, and God knows what else. Patrick finally understood why he was so strong. It would be weirder if he wasn't strong with that many support spells. But those buffs wouldn't last long. Patrick mentally calculated that they'd probably hold for a minute at most. Just as Patrick went to lift his sword, his entire body froze, and he crashed heavily to the ground. It was a paralysis spell. Patrick cursed under his breath. This damned skill again. A triumphant smirk spread across Nifrem's face. So who's the winner now, you bastard? I never expected you to have the strength to push me this far. Patrick tilted his head, looking toward Sylvia. That shy little girl. Her magic power really isn't bad at all.
To think she could use paralysis to bind me for even a second. Oh well, I guess I should take care of that little mage first. Shut your mouth. Nifream brutally stomped on Patrick's chest. Die! He gripped his short sword with both hands and putting all his strength into it drove the blade down toward Patrick's skull. He thought victory was finally his, but only a split second later. The sight made Nifream freeze in terror. Patrick had caught the blade between two fingers, stopping it just a knuckle's width from his skull. On the face that was nothing but bone, a mocking grin appeared. Ta-da! How was my acting? Nifream's face went pale. Patrick's two fingers held the sword so tight that Nifream couldn't even move it an inch. It's been so long since an adventurer. It could actually defeat me. It got boring. So I played along with you all just to taste the feeling of defeat. How was it? The feeling of pushing your opponent to the edge, victory within your grasp, felt great, didn't it? Had your fun yet? Patrick's eyes grew cold. The mockery vanished, replaced by burning, killing intent. Thanks for bringing me this bit of joy. Ah, the owner of that horrific scream was Nifream. He had just woken up from a short blackout. Patrick was still sitting there, as still as a statue. Awake, are you? It only took me a few seconds to wrap things up after you passed out. Though, it's better if you see it for yourself. Following Patrick's gesture, Nifream could see the pile of bodies stacked like a mountain behind him. The title of Knight Patrick wasn't just for show. The proof was that no one who had ever crossed him had survived, and this time was no exception. Patrick thought Nifream was an idiot for thinking he could actually win. You should know that nobody walks away from a meeting with me, but it seems all you knew was my name and nothing else. Patrick casually tossed a corpse in front of Nifream. He didn't even need to see the face. The familiar blue hair told him exactly who it was. It was Sylvia, daring to use sacred magic. Just thinking about it makes my bones itch. Anyway, Nifream, that mage, I was calling your name right up to the very end. She called for you so desperately. Nifream stared at Sylvia's body speechless, his face devoid of any real expression. This left Patrick feeling let down. He had hoped for a more emotional or frantic reaction, but Nifream's expression now was truly disappointing. Nifream, you're cold-hearted. Now for the interrogation of the only survivor. Patrick wasn't just some monster who knew only how to kill. With his intelligence, he had realized right away that this expedition smelled wrong. Even if Feimer was an idiot, there was no way. He would only send 30 men, especially when an army of over 70 from Bern had already been crushed. Furthermore, the men under Nifream's command this time, frankly, were far too mediocre. Patrick didn't hold back, pressing his sword directly against Nifream's throat. Tell me what you're hiding. Seeing that Nifream still wasn't reacting, Patrick lost patience and gave him two choices. 1, raise your right hand if you want to answer willingly. 2, raise your left for a quick and painless death. Before 3 seconds passed, Nifream raised his right hand. Patrick was very satisfied. Oh, smart choice. Now tell me everything you know and I'll grant you. Before Patrick could finish, Nifream curled all his fingers, except for his middle finger. This annoyed him greatly. Such a rude gesture shouldn't be directed at an undead knight like Patrick. Good grief. I can't believe I'm being insulted like this. Patrick raised his sword high. Fine then. I'll respect your decision. Have a slow, painful death. The cold blade ruthlessly pierced through Nifream's chest. He instantly slumped forward, hot blood dripping onto Sylvia's face. Patrick walked away beforehand, feeling exhausted because he would have to clean up another pile of corpses soon. When there was no movement left, Nifream suddenly opened his eyes. Ordinarily, a normal person would never be able to survive a state like this. But Nifrel was different. He looked at Sylvia's face one last time, his emotions a chaotic mess. Then he bowed his head low and whispered softly, Sylvia, I'm sorry, but I have to survive. Nifrel opened his mouth wide and began to eat the remains of his fallen comrade. The scene was too revolting to be described with mere images. Naturally, it caught Patrick's eye. He knew full well that something terrifying was hidden within Nifrel, but he never thought it would be him. Eating human flesh. So eating the dead makes him stronger and heals his wounds, huh? And this power grows with every meal. Patrick wasn't sure. He only knew that the sound of tearing flesh out there made his skin crawl.
1,000 questions swirled in Patrick's mind. What kind of creature is that Nifrim really? Where does his power originate? Alchemy or dark magic? The answer remained a mystery. The dungeon was filled with corpses and Patrick planned to use those bodies and some time to observe Nifrim closely. Only then could he find the exact answer. He let out a sigh. Now, aside from the bastard-eating corpses out there, Patrick had another concern, his dim-witted boss. He had no idea what Davar was doing or where he was out there. Patrick only hoped his boss wasn't up to anything strange, in some bizarre place. Managing this dungeon is hard enough as it is. Please just don't give people any more reasons to worry. Meanwhile, on the other side, the Blue Crane army was being swallowed by Devourer in a sea of flames. Just then, Gwyn arrived at the scene. Devourer cast a very impatient glance at her, barely acknowledging her with half an eye. What's this you've come to throw your life away to? No, I am Gwyn Historia, a hero. Upon hearing the word hero, Devourer was clearly much more interested. Now Gwyn was finally being looked at with seriousness, rather than the disdainful look from before. I never asked who you were. I like your soul, but you won't be able to defeat me. Gwyn also, and knew that. This disparity in strength had been obvious ever since they were at the auction house. But even so, she had to stop Devourer for one single reason. Gwyn is a hero of this empire. Once again, she used every bit of her speed and all the strength she possessed, channeling it into that gauntlet. She then punched straight at Devourer, but unfortunately this time, he caught the blow easily. Sorry, but you can only attack me with that move once. No one steps into the same river twice, right? Devourer forcefully grabbed Gwyn's hand and applied pressure. A crisp, cracking sound rang out. Before Gwyn could even react, she was violently slammed into the ground by Devourer. The force was so great that Gwyn vomited blood. Her internal organs felt as if they had shattered. She knew she couldn't defeat this monster, but at the very least it seemed she had bought a little more time. Devourer continuously assaulted his opponent with a flurry of punches and kicks. Gwyn was in so much pain she couldn't stop screaming, but she didn't forget that she was a hero, and that her duty was to protect humanity and the Empire. A moment later, Gwyn had been beaten until she was as limp as a noodle. Devourer lifted her up with one hand, examining her as if he were checking a bunch of vegetables at the market. A hero, and you're already finished. He had expected Gwyn to meet her ancestors already, but at that moment, the resilient girl opened her mouth and repeated that boring line again. I am the hero, Gwyn Historia. Gwyn opened her eyes. Her pale purple pupils were losing focus, but her attitude remained very firm, refusing to surrender. I cannot fall like this. I cannot let you lay a finger on my people. Gwyn's gauntlet-clad arm was being gripped tightly by Devourer. She gathered all her remaining strength into her other arm. Veins and muscles bulged, and she just wanted to land one massive blow on him. But the spirit was willing while the flesh was weak. Gwyn's hand just barely brushed Devourer's chest before going limp. Before dropping her arm completely, she didn't forget to repeat that line. So mechanically, it was annoying. I am a hero. I must protect the innocent. Devourer released his grip on Gwyn, and she slumped to the ground. Gwyn Historia, I will remember. Your name, though I'm not sure for how long. With all the respect due to someone as brave as you, I shall grant you a clean, painless death. Devourer raised his hand to finish her off, but just then someone launched a sneak attack from behind. By the time he reacted, Gwyn had vanished. Behind him, an entire army appeared, and that girl was now in the arms of their leader. Are you guys sausages or something? Why do you keep popping up one after another like a string of sausages? Then please forgive our rudeness. We were forced to use strong measures to save Ms. Gwyn. Davar wasn't buying this apology because honestly, who wants to forgive someone who just threw a rock at the back of their head? The person holding Gwyn slowly stood up, facing Davar defiantly. Allow me to offer my greetings, however belated. I am Akita Bariasgal Uvastan, a member of the Black Tiger Corps. It is an honor to meet the almighty Lord Master of the Great Devourer Corps. You just called me Lord, didn't you, Devourer? How did you know that I simply had a few clues to identify you? Akita's confident smile made Devourer feel very annoyed. He really detested humans who like to act smart and mysterious in front of him. Mana began to pour relentlessly from his body. Devourer's form grew increasingly twisted, becoming a terrifying half-demon, half-human hybrid. But Akita, who led the army, had no intention of attacking. Instead, he maintained an attitude of, they respectfully expressed that they wanted to strike a deal with the Devourer. The Devourer found this to be the most ridiculous thing he had ever heard. A lowly human wants to strike a deal with an omnipotent lord. Especially since Renee is dead, he has nothing left to regret in this world. You'd better watch your tone. If you dare to insult me, you won't have an easy death, the human said, facing the brutal monster of imperial mythology. Ark was extremely tense, but didn't dare show the other party that he was afraid. This was a massive gamble, and the price of failure was the Empire's collapse. He couldn't afford a single mistake. The original owner of the beheading claw is still alive. That sentence was surprisingly effective. The Devourer paused all his movements, and the mana surrounding his body stabilized. Sensing the opening, Ark continued, I'm sure you didn't come all this way just to retrieve one of the 36 virtuous masterpieces, so we are here to offer our assistance. And what if I say I don't need it? The Devourer stepped forward, pressing his face close to the other. What if I just took back the beheading claw out of sheer boredom? And if my true goal is to annihilate your kind, what will you do then? Ark broke out in a cold sweat at such close range. He could feel the cruelty of the Devourer more clearly than ever. This was no joke, but this was no time to waver. If you intend to destroy us everything, then whether I offer this deal or not, it wouldn't change anything, would it? Fine then. Go find the owner of this item immediately. Ark, knowing the deal was struck, turned and called out to Gazo. Gazo possessed a special type of magic that allowed her to track someone through items they had once used. To find the maid who used the sword, Gazo asked the Devourer to lend her the beheading claw for a moment. He didn't hesitate for even a second. After all, humans couldn't beat him even with the beheading claw. And if you do anything foolish, it won't just be a hand you lose. Yes, I understand. Gazot focused her mana into the beheading claw for a long time. Finally, she concluded, the person is too far away for me to pinpoint the exact location, but she is moving. West towards the capital city of lies. West meaning towards Hostin, just as the Devourer had originally intended. If Gazot said Renee was moving, it meant she was still alive. Thinking of this alone, the Devourer's mood improved significantly. He let out a sigh and slowly withdrew the massive, terrifying source of mana, his appearance gradually returning to that of a normal human. That much information is enough. I owe you both. I will remember your names. The Devourer patted Ark on the shoulder and brushed past the two of them to move forward. It's an honor to be of use to you. Get going. And just like that, the capital of lies escaped death by a hair's breadth that day. The Devourer walked to the Agria teleportation wheel, which was now in a wretched state. She had received the Devourer's orders to hold the fort, but those humans were like sausages, constantly dragging one another here. Lord Devourer, you're too late. But look, I kept my promise. I successfully defended the teleportation gate. Agria gave a playful and eager smile, like a child hoping for a piece of candy as a reward for a job well done. With that, I think it's more than enough to welcome you back. Her voice grew faint and then died out. Agria was exhausted from the battle and passed out, reverting to her childlike form. The Devourer hurriedly caught her with his tentacles. This kid worked really hard today. He walked toward the teleportation wheel and examined how to use it. It seemed simple enough, just adjust the coordinates to hasten and channel his mana to operate it. But the unthinkable happened. As soon as the Devourer funneled his mana into the device, cracks appeared instantly. Moments later, it shattered into pieces. Damn it! The teleportation gate couldn't even handle my mana. A bunch of question marks appeared over the Devourer's head. He thought he had been doing a great job at controlling his mana. Now that the gate was broken, the only way left was to use his own innate magic to teleport. But the Devourer was afraid that doing so would make him revert to his true form. That would be too flashy. Patrick would definitely behead him. Damn it, I've stepped onto a path of no return, but now there's no other way. The Devourer couldn't just give up. He took off the ring Patrick gave him to stabilize his mana. That incredible stream of mana immediately poured out, surging like a waterfall. Sorry, Patrick. I was just left with no choice. With the Devourer's transformation, the surrounding area instantly became a chaotic mess. The Lord had revealed his true form. He had identified the coordinates he needed the magic tower located, in the town of Haston, and coincidentally, Renee was currently at the base of the tower. When the guards saw her, they demanded her identity, hometown, and other basic info. Obviously, Renee didn't want to talk. Our magic tower receives countless people from everywhere every day, so you can't enter without verifying your identity. The naive guard, still didn't know what terrifying danger he was facing. A second later, 3 swords appeared in Renee's hands. Oh, so it seems you can't escape. Then Renee ended the guard's life without a single wasted movement. She flew inside the tower. Arriving here for the first time, Renee thought to herself that this place was constructed, just like a dungeon. And now she is certain that magic towers are nothing more than dungeons created by humans, because they are just weak monsters, that's all. Along the way, anyone who crossed paths with Renee was ruthlessly cut down in an instant. Every guard on the first floor was slashed to death. Renee marched straight to the top floor, where the person she hates most is hiding. Oh my, I was curious who my opponent was. So you aren't human. Roma still maintained the same composure as when she and Renee first met. Beautiful, yet cunning. Where is the head? Oh ho, that is already my property. There is no reason for me to tell you, but I am curious. How are you still alive? Renee didn't want to waste words with this sinister woman. She tightened her grip on the 3 blades in her hands. Seeing this, Romus wasn't afraid at all. Instead, she laughed mockingly. Oh my, the weapons you're holding really don't suit your tiny pretty face at all. Why do you think you can fight me, the master of the magic tower, with just those little daggers? Romus waved her hand gently, creating a massive magic shield. She was incredibly arrogant, never imagining that Renee could break that magic shield with a single strike, shattering it into pieces. Scared, yet you're terrified, aren't you? This terrifying strength of Renee's far exceeded her predictions, but Romus still tried to stay calm. After all, this magic tower was built upon an endless source of mana. Therefore, if she could tap into this infinite mana, she would surely win. Where is my head? Tell me now, you bitch! Renee fought more fiercely with every passing second, losing her composure, and her right eye grew cloudier with every moment, and Romus fought back frantically. Too bad that item is no longer here. I already brought it to the auction in Liège. The 2 sides fought so intensely that the whole room descended into chaos. Romus realized that Renee was truly a powerful monster, so she unleashed all her strength to fight her opponent. A series of skills were unleashed simultaneously, all aimed straight at Renee. Boom! With one loud sound, the top floor of the tower was damaged by this massive explosion. The impact was heavy. Romus's holy magic, like invisible blades, pierced through Renee's small body. She coughed, cough, cough, while that sorceress gloated with delight. Indeed, if a monster like you dares to challenge us humans, you have to suffer the consequences. Romus was incredibly conceited. The skills she had just used were high-level magic. Only a few supreme dungeon bosses could withstand them. But she never knew that her opponent was not only a dungeon boss, but also belonged to the hardest-to-conquer dungeon in the world, the Hell Core. The situation changed in an instant. Both of Romus's arms, which were holding her staff, were somehow, shredded. Blood sprayed like a fountain as the pain hit her, causing her to writhe in agony. Why, it hurts so much. How can this be? My arms. That was only your 2 arms. Renee observed her opponent with eyes as cold as blades and a completely expressionless face. Don't make such a racket as if you're about to die, you lowly human. Romus finally knew fear, and not wanting to die, she hurriedly begged Renee for mercy. But if you do wrong, you must pay the price. Renee wasn't kind enough to forgive someone who had deceived her. The woman's fate was sealed. She wanted her to wither away and die on her own from the pain. Everything was over. Renee turned to leave, because now she felt exhausted and sleepy. Her whole body felt like she was floating on clouds, but a piercing scream rang out, bringing Renee back to reality instantly. Leader. A blue-haired man appeared from out of nowhere. He rushed to embrace Romus, who was dying in a pool of blood. She used her final bit of strength to order him to kill Renee immediately. The man watched Romus for a moment. He handed her a magic stone containing a dark curse identical to the ruby that Romus had once used to trick Renee. Seeing this, a feeling of discomfort rose in her heart, but Romus had absolutely no idea what she was about to face. The man said she was losing too much blood and that this stone would help her teleport to a safe place. Romus didn't suspect a thing. She immediately grabbed it and channeled her mana into it. The curse was activated instantly, quickly engulfing her body. The man then wore a very sinister smile. It turned out he was a spy. Because Romus's business practices were garbage, she had offended countless people over the years, so they had sent him to eliminate her. Luckily, Renee had come for revenge today, saving him a lot of effort. After pushing Romus into the dark curse, he slipped away amidst the chaos. As for her, by this moment she had been transformed into a monster with terrifying power. Her reason was long gone. Renee's vision blurred. She couldn't clearly see what her opponent had become. All she knew was that the monster's aura was quite strong and her own condition wasn't good. It was very difficult to confront it. But this didn't make Renee afraid. She had already wanted to die neatly and cleanly. All she wanted now was for it to end, and if she could leave this world here, wiping away every trace, that would be for the best. But even in death, Renee wanted to die fighting until her final breath, especially because she didn't want these filthy creatures to touch their hands to her beloved devourer. Thinking that, Renee lunged, using her blade to stab the monster Romus. Romus writhed in pain and used her strength to knock Renee away. She felt her strength fading and closed her eyes, ready to welcome the approaching death. Just at that moment, the magic tower suffered another massive explosion. Renee could feel a flow of mana, one that couldn't be more familiar. A firm hand caught her. This scene was so familiar, almost like the first time they met. Devourer had saved her just like that back then. Everything was almost completely drained. Renee was completely out of options, and then he appeared just like this to save her, the great Devourer. Lord Devourer, is it really you? Even though she saw it with her own eyes, Renee still found it hard to believe. Why would the Devourer appear here? Is this real or just a hallucination of someone on the brink of death? After catching Renee, Devourer gently set her down in a corner. "Wait for me a moment," he said, turning to face Groma, who was currently in the form of a shadowy monster. That steady, reassuring back instantly made Renee feel a sense of peace regarding that creature Gromi. Devourer held back absolutely none of his cruelty. He immediately switched into slaughter mode, attacking continuously, so it had no chance to fight back. The way Devourer tortured Groma seemed like a way to vent all the frustration he'd built up over the past few days. After all, she was the root of all his problems. If not for that damned pink crystal, Renee wouldn't have run away and he wouldn't have had to struggle to find her and deal with all this pointless nonsense. Devourer kept hitting her, but Gromus was as tough as a cockroach. No matter how much he pounded her, she wouldn't die. This made him extremely impatient. The monster's body was covered in sticky, filthy blood, which Devourer found absolutely disgusting. "I get it now. You keep refusing to die. It must be because you're linked to the endless mana spring beneath this tower, right? Not for nothing is he the protagonist." He finally realized the core of the issue. Well, then time to change tactics. It's simple enough. If you can't beat them to death, just swallow them whole. Thinking this, Devourer immediately transformed his body, then opened his maw filled with razor-sharp teeth and gulped Gromi down. Now he just had to wait for digestion. There's no way she's coming back from that. That was truly hard to swallow. The taste was disgusting, Devourer remarked sarcastically. He turned back to Renee, who was sitting on the ground with her face buried in her hands. Devourer sat down. He leaned his back against hers. There were so many things he wanted to say. At the very least, he wanted to tell her how exhausting his journey to find the lost girl had been over the past few days. But Devourer also knew that Renee's state of mind was completely chaotic right now, so he ultimately chose to comfort her first. "Renee, this whole thing, it was my fault. I'm so sorry for everything I've done." With tears in her eyes, feeling incredibly vulnerable and wronged, she replied, "You don't need to apologize to me. It was all my fault." These were truly heartfelt words, not just her acting out. Renee was deeply ashamed and regretful. Just because of her trivial personal desires, she had been played by humanity and had almost caused both herself and Lord Devourer to be killed by that curse. Don't say that. The ancient core always needs you, and to me. Renee, you are also a very important person. These words weren't too cheesy, but they were enough to touch Renee's heart. Over these past few days, she had always assumed Devourer must be furious and despise her. But today, hearing him say it himself, her mind, which had been taut like a bowstring, could finally relax a little. You don't hate Renee anymore. I never hated you to begin with. Here I've got something cool to give you. Devourer stood up and took out the Fang of Severance, holding it out in front of Renee. This was what he had gone to such great lengths to retrieve. Seeing her weapon, the emotions she'd been holding back instantly shattered, and tears poured out like a stream. Renee hurriedly hugged the Fang of Severance, her tears flowing freely. Renee had been so afraid of being hated by Lord Devourer. You won't abandon me, will you? Don't say things like that. Devourer let his actions speak for him. He reached his hand out toward Renee. Firmly, he made his request. Come on, let's head back to the ancient core together. 80 years ago, the first time Devourer brought Renee to the ancient core, she was so tiny and cute. Patrick, with his sharp tongue, looked her up and down. He made snide remarks mocking her for just being a dwarf. I found the kid during that fire in the Grappenia forest a while back. Devourer yawned lazily, but then continued. I found her in the lab. I felt a connection, so I just brought her along. So this tiny body was holding all the information and knowledge of the dwarf race. Devourer hummed to answer Patrick's question. Furthermore, he held Renee in high regard, because despite being in the dungeon of the world's strongest boss, the ancient core, for the first time, she remained very calm and obedient. It's not just her resilient personality. Since this is the lair of demons filled with dense dark energy, it means her mental and physical strength are strong enough to face things like this. Boss, how do you intend to deal with this child? If he had brought Renee here, Devourer certainly wasn't so boring as to want to eat her. He saw that this child had great potential, so he wanted to keep her here, to live here and teach her how to fight. If it turned out she couldn't be taught, he'd just let her live here peacefully. After all, Renee used to be a servant. So if she couldn't fight, he could just assign her tasks like laundry or cooking. Wait a minute, boss. Are you being serious? Who else is going to teach her? Patrick wore a disgusted expression. Of all things in this world, he hated having troublesome tasks dumped on him like this. You, of course, cheer up, will you? No way. Why does it have to be me? Come on, don't pretend to be cold. Devourer knew perfectly well that Patrick was just playing hard to get, when in reality he was dying of boredom with nothing to do. Having Renee for company would be a joy. He didn't know why he was pretending to complain. Patrick asked for her name. Devourer vaguely remembered it was something like Leo or Lo, but Patrick complained the name wasn't good and sounded stunted. Furthermore, if Devourer had adopted the girl, he should give her a new name to commemorate this milestone of rebirth. Devourer thought that sounded reasonable. He thought for a moment. How about we call her Renee? And just like that, from that day on, Renee had a new name, Renee Lalo, and her life turned a new page from that moment forward. Patrick was also very fond of this child. The first thing that he taught her wasn't how to fight, but was how to smile. 80 years have passed since those memories. Now they have returned to the ancient core once again. Patrick greeted his master with a rather unfriendly attitude. Wow, you still look so relaxed in a situation like this, huh? What the hell were you doing in Haston to make the ground shake so hard that even the ancient core could feel it? Facing Patrick's interrogation, Devourer didn't know what to say. Should he lie and say he was out in the street doing the cha-cha? Or would it be more reasonable to honestly confess that his identity had been exposed and he had to teleport back from Liège in his true form? And he also destroyed a human magic tower. Patrick, a monster's life is full of exceptions, isn't it? The exception is that thing, right? Patrick pointed at Agria, who was still fast asleep and snoring in Devareur's arms. She looked even smaller than Renee when they first met. It's a long story, Devarer stammered. Patrick was startled. Did his boss go out on a mission and casually kidnap a child on the way back? Devarer threw Agria aside. I swear to the heavens, I didn't want to bring this burden with me either. And another thing, where is Renee? This was the main topic Patrick cared about. Devourer kept mumbling, seemingly not wanting to talk about it. Patrick, I met Renee in a human village. She looked tired and frail. I'm wondering if we've been hindering her personal life lately. Patrick brushed him off immediately. If you were rejected by her, just say it straight. Why the long-winded beating around the bush? Devourer had been hit right in his sore spot and was extremely embarrassed. To save face, he ordered, From now on, Patrick, you will take over Renee's position. Specifically wear a maid outfit and manage this entire dungeon. Patrick immediately pulled out a resignation letter he had kept hidden in his ribs. Boss, this is inhumane labor exploitation. So what are you going to do now? Devourer didn't know what to do. There was nothing left to do in the dungeon, but he would still wait. That was likely the case. He had already explained everything he could, so now he could only wait for Renee to have a change of heart and come back on her own. Although he didn't know how long he would have to wait, Patrick felt dejected. He walked away, thinking that his boss probably wanted to be alone. But after walking only a few steps, Patrick saw a familiar figure at the door. Long silver hair, a petite frame, and that maid outfit. Boss? She's back. Who's back? Who else could it be but the person you've been waiting for? Renee had indeed returned. She was just like before, smiling brightly and asking what Devourer wanted to eat so she could prepare it. But this time, Patrick felt there was something strange about her. Looking closely, Renee's right eye had turned golden. Boss, did you really give her that? Are you out of your mind? Patrick looked at Devourer suspiciously. Earlier, after destroying Gromy, Renee's right eye had been completely destroyed. Without a second thought, Devourer had immediately gouged out one of his own eyes and gave it to her along with a promise. If you still have the heart and keep that stone, I don't care when it is, just think it over carefully. Once you have, bring me the stone of love next time. That was the reason Renee returned with that new golden eye. She even begged her master, even more than before. Renee swore that from now on she would always stay by Devourer's side and never leave again. A long while later, Agria woke up. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw Patrick sitting next to her sharpening his sword. Agria's soul nearly left her body. What's this? Am I dead? Is the person in front of me the Grim Reaper? Is this hell? Sorry, kid, this isn't. The afterlife. This is the ancient core. Hearing the words, ancient core, Agria's eyes lit up like stars. The girl realized it immediately. So the person in front of her wasn't the Grim Reaper, but the Death Knight Patrick. Patrick gave a thumbs up to show his approval. This kid is smart, isn't she? Seeing that Agria was awake, Patrick kicked Devourer, who was sleeping soundly nearby, to wake him up. He let out a long yawn and lazily looked at Agria. Oh, you're up! Agria was dumbfounded by this massive, gigantic figure. Her mouth stayed wide open and wouldn't close. You are the master of the ancient core, the embodiment of creation, the guardian of the gods, the punisher of cowards, the supreme ancient monster lord, Devourer. Agria knelt down and kowtowed, reciting the words like a tape recorder. Devourer had heard this somewhere before. It seemed that back in Liège she had praised Lord Devourer with the exact same words. Before he could even speak, the Agria brand speech machine continued to operate at full power. Your Majesty, no. Please forgive me, allow me to introduce myself. I am the 17th descendant of the Demon King Asmodeus Melsalem Agria. Even the introduction was word for word the same. This child was operating like a pre-recorded tape. Yeah, I know that already. How do you know my name? Agria was both surprised and honored. I suppose Lord Swando must have introduced me to Lord Devourer. Come to think of it, where was Swando? She only remembered that the last time they met, Swando had given the humans in the capital Liège a hard time and had snatched back the decapitated head. Seeing that this kid was so clueless, Devourer was too lazy to keep hiding his identity any longer. I am Swando. Agria's expression gradually became complex. First she was bewildered, then shocked, and then her face went pale. Oh my, Swando is Devourer, and Devourer is Swando. That means the person who accompanied me All this time, it was the great Lord Devourer Agria watched as the world crumbled, realizing she had accidentally offended the great Devourer. Oh no. Oh no, I'm dead. I'm absolutely dead. Boss Patrick. Wait. He suddenly spoke up, cutting off their conversation. About what the Demon King Melee said earlier regarding the mess you made in the capital of Liège. Why didn't you tell me about that, my lord? Well, that's it. I've really been caught now. And just then, in the Grapinia forest, located on the border of the Hastan territory, 2 commoners were sneaking into the forbidden woods to gather herbs and mushrooms. Suddenly, one of them noticed some movement nearby. A blonde person, heavily wounded, had fallen from who knows where and was groaning incessantly. Seeing the stranger so badly hurt, the kind-hearted girl hurriedly rummaged through her bag for some medicinal herbs. But to her surprise, the stranger lunged at her like a rabid dog and bit her. That face, who else could it be? But nifral blood splattered onto the storm lantern the girl was carrying. It goes without saying what fate awaited her. The scene shifted slightly. A tall, thin figure wrapped in tattered white robes was walking unsteadily. The direction he was headed was the defensive wall of the Hastan territory. I must go, he thought. At the same time, in the ancient core dungeon, a battle had broken out, but it wasn't between Devourer and humanity. It was between 2 girls, Renee and Agria. If you are a true demon king, then show some restraint, Agria. I've told you how many times now. During the Great Devourer's nap time, silence is the absolute golden rule, okay? No, I refuse. I'm a free monster. I won't be tied down by your rules. Besides, I came to the ancient core to keep Lord Devourer company and talk to him. The 2 sides were at each other's throats, neither willing to yield. Renee wanted to protect Devourer's sleep, driven by long-standing affection and absolute devotion to her lord. Agria, on the other hand, just wanted to cling to Devourer, also out of a lifelong obsession. Whether she has a crush on him like Renee does is unknown. But one thing is for sure, this girl is quite a handful. She wouldn't back down from Renee even for a second. I will stay by his side and keep him warm until Lord Devourer drifts off to sleep. In this regard, Renee is just too passive. You really are a sheltered girl. No wonder the Great Lord doesn't like you. This statement directly hit Renee's battle switch. This little rival of hers, who appeared out of nowhere, had ruined her position as the only female in the ancient core dungeon, and now she dared to blatantly call her a sheltered brat. Renee's eyes turned red with fury as she whipped out her weapon. Damn it, I'm going to take you out. Agria knew she couldn't beat her, so she laughed loudly and took off running. Catch me if you can, nah, 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 nah. On the sidelines, Patrick was gritting his teeth, trying his best to hold back the urge to turn those 2 troublemakers into a stir-fry. Ever since Agria returned, this place has been like hell. No, a single moment of peace. Even Devourer, who usually sleeps 20 hours a day, was getting a massive headache from Renee and Agria's constant bickering, making it impossible for him to get any rest. You have no right to complain about them being noisy. Whose fault is it that you brought that burden back here, turning our dungeon into such a chaotic mess? And besides, out there, the world is turning upside down. Is it really that serious? Patrick knew Devourer wouldn't bother reading the human newspapers he brought, which is why he knew nothing of the situation outside. After the incident where Devourer appeared in the capital, soldiers were deployed to increase security in Liège. Because of that, the border villages were constantly being attacked by monsters. And there's more. I don't know why, but the Lord of Hastan committed suicide, so that territory is now completely paralyzed. I've read all the papers for the past 3 weeks, and there are very few articles about Hastan. Do you know what that means? No. Patrick just wanted to give Devourer a beating. It's true that besides eating, sleeping, and causing trouble, he's useless. He really truly wants to submit his resignation letter. So, what do you think, Patrick? Patrick wasn't entirely sure of his deduction, but he suspected that Hastan had been completely cut off from the outside world. Here, Devourer in his monster form had severely destroyed the town of Hastan, yet this incident had gone completely unheard of, to the point that it didn't even make the news. It's truly puzzling. The reason Patrick was so concerned about this territory was that it was the closest human village to the ancient core. If they kept an eye on Hastan's activity, they could be more proactive in tracking the subjugation teams coming their way, including their forces and when they might attack the ancient core. But right now, if Haston has truly been cut off, then if any subjugation team arrives there, that information won't reach the newspapers either. I think I need to hurry to Haston to scout. If we leave it like this, the consequences will be unimaginable. Right, so I wish you a safe journey. Just don't push yourself so hard that you end up dying. Devourer thought to himself, please just go by yourself. Please just go. He had only just returned after days of labor, and now only wanted to eat and sleep. Then I shall return as soon as possible, my lord. Devourer raised his head, startled. Is it really that easy? Patrick can actually go alone without dragging anyone else along? Well, that's fine too. As long as he gets to sleep, everything else is unimportant. But Patrick took 2 steps, turned his head back, and gave Devourer a look that was, well, not exactly friendly, boss. Don't you think it'll be awfully hard for me to go alone, my lord? I feel like it'd be better to have at least one more person along. The Devourer was so startled he jumped right up. Who on earth has a boss who gets pushed around by their subordinate like this? Devourer's gaze fell upon 2 wild ducks fighting. His number 1 candidate was Agria, but he didn't think much of that nuisance, even if she was a pretty decent demon king of magic. But she's especially dangerous. If you had to evaluate that girl's magic, you'd accurately call it explosive magic. If she went along with Patrick and ended up using a spell, like that reconstruction stunt back in the capital, then all of Haston would be wiped out. Devourer shook his head, cooling down no matter how he thought about it. Agria wasn't a good fit. So on to candidate number 2, Renee. She was already quite familiar with Patrick, but thinking it over, letting Renee go was even worse, because compared to Agria, she was even more dangerous. If that nuisance was explosive magic, then Renee's existence is super-duper explosive magic, especially since she's currently in a sensitive phase harboring a grudge against humans. Taking Renee into a human village right now is no different than bringing a ticking time bomb. Just then, Patrick excitedly voiced his own idea, since they didn't know how long they'd be gone. Lord, why don't you come with me? In your dreams. Not even for money would the Devourer want Anon to step foot in a human village again. But truthfully, he really was the most suitable choice right now. But still, the Devourer just wanted to sleep. Suddenly, a way out popped into his head. It seems like I am the best choice for this situation, isn't it? But unfortunately, I can't transform because I accidentally broke that Demira bracelet thingy. The Devourer was smug, thinking he was just too clever. This way, Patrick wouldn't be able to force him to go, anymore. Oh, is that so? Truly. If you don't have the bracelet, you can't go with me. Meaning if you did have the bracelet, you'd go right. Wait, hold on, why? Are things not going the way I wanted? In the end, the Devourer was still grabbed by the scruff of his neck and dragged out of the dungeon. On the way, he didn't stop cursing, that Patrick would die a painful death. But he just laughed, haha, because unfortunately, Patrick was already dead to begin with. Somehow or other, he had managed to find a similar Demira bracelet, and just like that, the Devourer had no way to escape, and still had to go to Haston with Patrick. His precious 20-hour sleep. Just like that was ruined. In all his life, he'd only ever seen bosses force subordinates to work overtime. This case of a subordinate forcing their boss on a business trip was truly a first. The 2 walked for a long time and finally arrived. The scene in Haston was now incredibly gloomy and desolate. You could tell from the very entrance. Boss, you've caused a huge mess. Patrick sighed wearily. Usually there are 4 ways to check how a village is living and developing. The first way is to see if the market is crowded, but the 2 of them arrived at the town's evening market, and it was emptier than a deserted temple. The second way is to see if there's much smoke rising from the chimneys, but since it was already past dinner time, that was a bit difficult. What's the third way? The Devourer asked, feeling like it was a huge waste of time. The third way is to see how many expedition squads are posted on the mission board. But because Haston didn't have one, just forget it. Then what the heck are we checking now? Let's go home. Sir, there's still the last way, the inns and taverns. The 2 spoke as they walked and arrived right in front of the biggest tavern in town. Without waiting for Patrick to say anything more, the devourer charged in first. If nothing else, mention alcohol and he'd perk right up. "Owner, do you have any room?" Before he could finish, the devourer was startled by the silent scene before him. This didn't fall outside of Patrick's predictions. There wasn't a single soul inside. This was the worst-case scenario. Haston was no longer a normal town. Not far away on the outskirts of Haston, human corpses were piled high. All of them had died in a terrifying manner under the night rain, and the scene became even more daunting. "You've all worked hard. After sweeping Haston, we will head to the Liaise capital. That is the enemy's central territory. Humanity is weaker than ever before the Black Calamity. This is the most perfect time to destroy this empire." Looking closely, he realized, wasn't this the strange, tall, skinny guy from yesterday, loitering outside the Haston city walls? The important thing was, his face was just a skull. No matter how you looked at it, it was easy to see this was a monster. Patrick and the devourer examined the situation in the tavern for a while. It seemed more serious than they had imagined. It appeared Haston had just suffered a terrifying attack and was now completely paralyzed. "Who are you?" A trembling voice rang out from the loft. "I am the owner of this tavern. For what purpose have you come here?" It wasn't hard to tell that he was very tense and afraid. To reassure the other party, Patrick stepped forward and introduced them as Knights of the Black Abyss Expeditionary Force from Netherlands. "We're just passing through. We just want a simple meal and to rest for the night." Upon learning the other party were customers, the owner relaxed a little. He came downstairs but said it was very unfortunate that the tavern no longer had enough food for a night, or more accurately, not just in this tavern. Even if you tore this whole village apart, there was nowhere else left with enough food. Is it because of that Black Calamity? So you also know about that. I apologize, but my tavern doesn't have any more rooms available to stay in either. I hope you can understand." Patrick seemed to think for a moment. It looked like in this situation, the price of food and water was even more expensive than the room, but that was fine. Whatever couldn't be solved with money could be solved with a lot of money. Patrick generously tossed a shiny gold coin to the owner. Sure enough, his attitude changed immediately. As fast as a squirrel, the owner pointed the way and invited Patrick to head upstairs. "Please guests, follow this way." As Patrick stepped onto the stairs, the owner noticed the small figure following behind him. "May I ask, who is this?" "Oh, him, he's my servant." I say servant, but honestly, he helps me out a lot. We were sharing a room. Devourer wasn't exactly thrilled to be called a servant in front of a stranger, but to be fair, looking at the current state of things, between the two of them, he really did look like Patrick's servant. When they reached the room at the inn, they were quite surprised. The quality was better than they'd imagined. At the very least, it blew that 8 silver coin dump in the capital where he and Agria had stayed before right out of the water. Devourer lazily flopped onto the bed, then started complaining to Patrick. "Couldn't you think of a more suitable cover than calling me your servant seriously?" It wasn't that he couldn't think of one. In this situation, that was the most logical cover. "My lord, look at the outfit you're wearing, the one you think is so comfortable. If you go out dressed so sloppily like that, people will treat you no better than a beggar." Patrick paused after his long speech, then added, "They might even treat you worse than a beggar." Back then, introducing Devourer as a servant made perfect sense, even though slaves were at the bottom of the social ladder. Much like beggars, at least outsiders, would look at the master and be too intimidated to mess with them. With Patrick looking as fierce as he did if he introduced himself as a knight, the innkeeper definitely wouldn't dare give Devourer a hard time. "By the way, boss, why do you act like you're on vacation when you're out on a mission?" "Honestly, if there's an afterlife, I'm definitely reincarnating as a rock." "Fine, then you go ahead and rest. I'm heading out. Wait a second." This was their first day out, and Devourer advised Patrick not to overdo it, but Patrick didn't want to waste any time. After all, now that it was the middle of the night, who would know what he was up to this time? Coming here, Patrick had gathered some rumors. The reason the Black Calamity had descended upon most of the Haston territory was due to the royal family's rage when faced with the disaster, and they surely needed someone to stand up and take the fall for the consecutive failures in conquering the ancient cores. However, before the royal family could intervene, the Lord of Haston, Etok had already passed away. His death was still a huge question mark in Patrick's mind. So who is the new Lord of Haston? It's been bugging me for days. Clearly the royal family is making blunder after blunder, focusing too much on conquering the ancient cores, but instead of admitting their failure, they're shifting the blame onto the empire's great houses. Patrick quietly wondered if he were a descendant of Etok, would he be able to sit on that lord's throne? Thinking about this, Patrick nimbly vaulted across the rooftops to reach the lord of Haston's castle. Might as well get a look at the new lord, right? But this was proving trickier than Patrick expected. Even though the town was sparse and empty, the castle was still heavily guarded. He started weighing whether he should knock everyone out, but that would definitely bring a whole heap of trouble by morning. Haste makes waste. Patrick turned away from the wall, deciding to head back to the inn to sleep. But on the way back, something changed his mind. It seems regular people wouldn't notice it, but he sensed it very clearly, the thick, lingering stench of rotting corpses coming from somewhere within the territory. At that same moment, Devourer, who had been sleeping like a log at the inn, was startled awake by insistent knocking at the door. Sir Knight, are you in there?" Thinking it was something urgent, Devourer went to open the door. He glossed over the situation, saying his master had gone out for a night stroll. The innkeeper didn't suspect a thing. It's just that he had whipped up a late-night meal. Even though food was scarce, Patrick had paid a very generous 1 gold coin, so he wanted to show his gratitude. "Come to think of it, we haven't properly introduced ourselves yet. I'm Novan. Anyway, just call me Novan. And you?" "I'm Swando, Mr. Swando. I hope you won't be disappointed. There's barely enough food left for me to whip up a few things." Devourer really hadn't thought the situation here was so dire that they couldn't even get enough to eat. But Novan saw it as more than just a calamity. Everyone who witnessed the Black Calamity firsthand had gone mad, and Lord Etok had ended his own life shortly after. After that, well, you've seen it yourself. Haston's communication with the outside world has been completely cut off. Nothing goes in, nothing goes out. If you step outside the city walls, you'll see people who died of starvation lying in heaps everywhere. The innkeeper kindly warned Devourer and Patrick to leave as soon as possible, even though he didn't know what their goal was. But Novan himself was planning to leave soon too. "Although I really don't want to leave Haston, you know how it is when people are pushed into a corner. They're capable of anything." Just then, a pair of grimy, dirty feet appeared on the windowsill. A child emerged with matted red hair and a face filled with hunger. While Devourer followed the innkeeper downstairs, the child darted its shifty eyes around the room, then hopped inside. It flashed a sly smile. Good. Seeing the state of the village, they still chose to stay, so they must be outsiders. It also realized the room Devourer and Patrick were in was the most expensive one in the inn. From that, it deduced that these two had plenty of money. The motive for theft was clear. This kid wanted to steal valuables to sell for cash. It even planned to keep Devourer's rag-like clothes to wrap up the stolen goods instead of using a cloth bag. The kid crept toward a bed in the room, but when it saw that it was completely empty, its expression soured. Damn it, don't tell me they took everything and already left. But with unwavering conviction, it kept searching the entire room until it finally found something in the dresser drawer. I knew it, it thought. They couldn't have taken everything right. But before it could even celebrate, it broke out in a cold sweat. It seemed it had seen something it really shouldn't have. By midnight, Patrick returned. After a long visit to Lord Devourer's castle, having eaten its fill and settled into bed, Patrick had originally wanted to sneak a peek at the new lord, but that place was under even stricter guard. He thought it was pointless, so he came back empty-handed. "Boss, did you find anything?" Patrick asked, just to go through the motions. He didn't expect much from a lazy boss like his. Naturally, Devourer had nothing to show for it except for the fact that he now knew Haston was practically cut off from the outside world. A moment ago, Devourer had tried to squeeze some info out of the innkeeper, but it seemed the man didn't know much either. Unexpectedly, upon hearing this news, Patrick wore a look like he'd just been struck by lightning. He didn't think his boss could actually accomplish something useful, even if it was just gathering a piece of news everyone already knew. That is, Haston has been isolated from the outside world. Let's go tomorrow. Find out more about this isolation situation, boss. If Patrick had eyes, he surely would have made them sparkle like a puppy's right now, but Devourer was too lazy. He was lounging about, not wanting to drag himself out of the house one bit. Patrick didn't like this attitude of the lords at all. It was clear they went out to find stuff, but in the end, only the boss got anything. Speaking of which, Patrick suddenly noticed the 2 windows were wide open. When he left earlier, he had only cracked one window open, but now both were wide open as if inviting a thief in to feast. Boss? Please try to keep the windows closed. At this rate, we're going to get robbed. Devourer looked confused. Since entering this room, his range of movement had only been around the bed. Nobody touched the windows, right? Haha, come on, boss. That's impossible. The wind can't just open the latches. Or do you think it was ghosts? Give me a break. Ghost or thief, whatever. Someone definitely opened those windows and it wasn't me. Devourer said, then startled himself at his own words. He sat up abruptly and looked around. The cloak was indeed gone. That cloak was made by Renee. If she saw it was missing, Devourer was afraid he'd be sliced to pieces. And Patrick's belongings had evaporated too. He looked even more flustered than his master. What did you lose, huh? Patrick turned his head, looking incredibly grim. Well, it was my rib at the time. The culprit who stole Devourer's rag and Patrick's rib had already long since fled. This kid named Rosalina had run quite far from the inn when she was blocked by some men. They didn't seem too happy that Rosalina was still wandering around late at night. She stood her ground, arguing that she had a valid reason, and that this time she was doing it for everyone. But the man not only wasn't moved, but shouted in her face, "Is wasting your energy for nothing and making yourself hungrier really, for everyone." It wasn't for nothing. Look, try holding this and see. Rosalina refused to give up. Another man's voice rang out, cutting off their shouting match. Tot, don't be so harsh. The man, called Tot, and Rosalina both turned their heads. The man who had just arrived was someone the girl called Leader. He thought Tot shouldn't get angry with her because thieves shouldn't be afraid of the dark. Rosalina's mistake was not saying a word to us before wandering off. Haston had become a chaotic mess. He believed the girl's actions could cause a lot of trouble for everyone. This place was not like their old home that had opened its warm arms to welcome the kid. Rosalina finally lowered her head and whispered an apology. Yes, I will be more careful, Leader. The reprimand over the Leader also wanted to know where Rosalina had gone. All evening, the girl excitedly set the bundle down from her shoulder and spread it on the ground. Tot's expression darkened when he saw what was inside. Meanwhile, Rosalina was still happily telling them about how she had stolen this from the most expensive room in the inn on the main street. She believed that the white thing was a very valuable antique. The man, called Leader, was silent for a few seconds, but finally decided to tell her the horrifying truth behind this antique. Rosalina, this is a human rib. Rosalina's face instantly turned pale. The girl panicked because she had no idea it was human bone. Tot even wondered if she had gone grave robbing, but Rosalina vehemently denied it. The Leader picked up the bone to examine it. He thought that this was either used for some twisted sadistic hobby of someone, or used in magic because no normal person would go around collecting human bones. They started to feel fearful. If this belonged to someone trained in necromancy or black magic, they were in big trouble. Not to mention the clothes Rosalina had brought back. If you just looked at them, they looked like beggar's rags. But when he picked them up, the Leader easily realized they were made from the highest quality fabric. When he lifted them, he even heard a sound from the pockets. What they saw inside dazzled them, a handful of gold coins. The eyes of both Tot and Rosalina lit up immediately, but the Leader became anxious. You idiots! This is no time to be happy, Leader. But I put in so much effort to get it. Rosalina's Leader broke out in a cold sweat. Guests at a luxury inn in a ruined village. No matter how you think about it, this isn't simple. Furthermore, the stolen item was a bone, a human ribcage and clothes made of high-quality fabric along with a large amount of gold. He knew the little leopard cub had messed with the wrong person. And sure enough, just as he thought that Devourer and Patrick had already tracked them down. Greetings, thieves. We're here to take back what's ours. Devourer looked at the item in the leader's hand, confirming his belongings were still safe. He let out a sigh of relief. That robe. If he'd really lost it, Renee would have made him sleep outside. Pachik also felt a burden lifted. If Renee got angry again, he wasn't sure she wouldn't blow up their entire dungeon. The leader of the group was actually a decent guy. Despite being terrified, he still stepped forward to shield the girl and Tot. How did you find us? Who knows? Pachik shrugged. Looks like those things were really missing their owner. Devourer picked his nose and let out a long yawn. He just wanted to go home and sleep. He saw the Great One was having another sleepy craving. Pachik also wanted to wrap this up quickly. He told the leader that if they returned the items, the two of them wouldn't hold a grudge. But the leader seemed sharp. He feared that after getting their things back, Devourer and Pachik wouldn't keep their word and would just slaughter them all. His intuition told him the two in front of him were extremely dangerous. Besides, even if they had tracked Rosalina, it was far too dark for them to have found their target this quickly. Unless those two were demons, it was impossible. He thought to himself, terrified by the very idea. Behind him, the leopard cub Rosalina, clueless as ever, was still clutching a piece of Pachik's rib. The leader reached out, took the two bones and held them out in front of him. I suppose this bone is very important to you, right? Oh, absolutely. It is a part of my own body after all. After Pachik confirmed this himself, the leader threw the two bone pieces high into the air. While they were still airborne, he ordered Tot to take the others and evacuate. Pachik scrambled forward, reaching for his bones, even sprawling out on the ground to catch them. Taking advantage of this, a guy hiding in the dark alley lunged out and delivered a thunderous blow straight to his head. But Pachik was fine while the weapon in the attacker's hand shattered into pieces. Devourer witnessed this, his face expressionless, and he let out another lazy yawn. What is this? They just used a rock as a weapon. Can't you at least have a decent weapon? No sooner had Devourer thought that than another guy behind him charged with a sword, trying to stab him in the back. Talk about ask and you shall receive. This one actually had a proper weapon. Devourer casually snapped the blade in half with his bare hands. Then he generously offered the guy some free dental work with a kick. Devourer lifted him up and turned to Pachik, seeking an opinion. How should we handle this one, master? Boss, you don't need to act anymore. Calling me master is just going to shorten your life. How about we just knock them all out for now? You want to keep them alive? I didn't say that. We should get this over with quickly. Devourer and Pachik split up and began making mincemeat out of the bandit group. With their strength, this was not difficult at all. But perhaps due to her sharp intuition, Renee back home felt restless. She kept wondering if everything was going smoothly for Devourer and Pachik. Agria looked annoyed. Devourer had only been gone for half a day, and she had already asked the same question 49 times. Agria tried to reassure her, but Renee kept complaining. Devourer was a legendary monster, the master of the ancient core. Why was she so worried he'd starve, go thirsty, or get bullied by humans? Over there, Pachik and Devourer had finished off the bandit group. He breathed a sigh of relief again. Seeing his robe was still intact, he had to admit the leader had impressed him. Even as a normal human, he had managed to ambush him. Pachik had intended to nip this in the bud, but to his surprise, once Devourer got his cloak back, he lay down on the ground and seemed like he didn't want to exert himself any further. You should lie down too, Pachik. It's more comfortable here than you'd think. Pachik really wanted to bury a pickaxe into his master's face and resign yet again. Just then, Rosalina, with a terrified expression, stepped out of the alley. She stammered an apology to the two of them for stealing the items. It was me who stole it. The others have nothing to do with this, so please spare them. The girl even knelt on the ground to beg. Tot also ran over, trying to pull Rosalina up. Get up. Do you think doing that will make these bastards spare us? Not a chance. Devourer lay with his legs crossed, leisurely letting out an "oh." Since Tot said so, he didn't mind ordering Pachik to take action. Pachik received the order from his master and began to slowly approach the pair. Tot, despite being terrified, pulled out a dagger to defend himself while he pulled Rosalina behind him for protection. In her panic, the girl didn't know what else to do. but clutch a crucifix in her hand and pray. Pachek was drawn to the object. He didn't punch or kick, instead he glided past Tot and stared intently at the item in the girl's hand. "Tell me, where did you get that?" It wasn't an ordinary object. It was a phoenix-shaped crucifix looking like an inverted cross. Furthermore, Pachek could feel mana flowing from it. It was Overseer mana. Overseer mana was now radiating from a pauper. Pachek hurried back to Devourer. He believed someone was watching the residents of Haston, and the proof was that when the girl prayed with the crucifix, the Overseer mana was emitted. That meant the crucifix only activated under certain conditions. "Boss, if we figure out those conditions, we might be able to discover what the owner of that cross is plotting." Devourer wasn't very interested. Haston was no longer a magic village anyway, but Pachek insisted on investigating to the end. He changed his plan to working with humans. After all, teamwork with humans might be easier than teamwork with Devourer. "Is it really necessary? How do you intend to handle this situation?" Pachek struck an extremely arrogant pose, then tapped his finger against his head, even though there was no brain inside his skull. "To keep brainstorming, I obviously came up with a super brilliant solution immediately." Boss Pachek completely changed his attitude, putting on a conciliatory act and apologizing to the group of thieves. Then he coolly made up a story that he was from the Night Knights, a secret organization reporting directly to the royal family known as the Mist of Ronaldo. He claimed he received a royal decree to purge anyone causing trouble for him. So the reason they were beaten up earlier wasn't because of the theft, but because they dared to steal from Pachek. His towering frame and shiny armor really fit the persona quite well. So Rosalina's group of thieves bought it hook, line, and sinker. "We had no intention of harming anyone, so please lower your guards." Faced with this situation, they actually let their guard down. "Why are you in Haston, Sir Knight?" "I've come here to save Haston." Continuing this flowery opening, Pachek said he was acting against the royal decree and spared their lives because he wanted to save the people of Haston. To do that, he needed information from them. Pachek said he needed to analyze the situation and send manpower as well as necessary supplies to Haston. "Aren't we all working together to restore peace to Haston? I need everyone's help." The group of thieves started whispering. The appearance of a royal knight here to save Haston was truly unimaginable, even though that wasn't the reality at all. But they truly believed that the Emperor hadn't abandoned them. To escape this way of life, they decided to team up with Pachek. Negotiating with humans was easier than Pachek imagined. While Devourer was the same as always, he had absolutely no interest in this. The only thing Devourer cared about was when they could return to the ancient core. "We've only just begun, boss. I'm starting to notice a lot of strange things here." Devourer yawned. Pachek was certainly very serious and hard-working, but he had a feeling that things were getting more and more complicated. And Devourer didn't want to get involved in any of this annoying stuff at all. He grabbed his head and flopped onto the road, throwing a tantrum. "Stop lying on the ground. We've come this far, so stop being lazy and get to work." Never had Devourer wished that Pachek could be as lazy as him. Pachek started delegating tasks. He said he would keep an eye on the leader of the thieves because he was the most suspicious one. Devourer's job was to stay with the commoners and try to get close to them. Hearing this, Devourer's face twisted immediately. He was the master of the ancient core, the most powerful demon, yet Pachek was making him get close to humans. Not to mention, Devourer was a half-baked introvert with tendencies towards social avoidance. What other choice is there, boss? Between a knight in full armor and a guy who looks like a beggar, who do you think is easier for them to approach? Devourer was extremely annoyed that his subordinate called him a beggar. But Pachek wasn't wrong. Pachek set a deadline for him to integrate with the humans before he returned. And of course, it had to be done in the way humans usually do it. Devourer felt very confused. How would he know what humans normally do to build rapport? Devourer figured humans were probably like him. They'd spend most of the day sleeping, and those who were awake would be daydreaming or slacking off. In general, motivation was at zero. Pachek was speechless. His lord was clearly projecting his own nature onto others. "Be serious, my lord. I need you to dig up information from those people. The faster we finish, the sooner we can go home and rest. Right, Devourer?" Devourer felt immense pressure, as if Pachek were truly the master in this relationship. Pachek didn't forget to remind Devourer that getting close to humans wasn't easy. If they were a bit rude, he had to keep his cool with all his might. Devourer wasn't very willing, but he had no choice but to agree. However, the situation unfolded differently than Patrick thought. The humans weren't just not rude. They were overly enthusiastic toward Devourer. They didn't discriminate against his beggar-like appearance at all, and even thought he was undercover to investigate. They kept calling Devourer by the flowery title of Sir Knight, and asked 10,000 why questions that drove him. Absolutely crazy. The Lord of the Hellcore really wanted to swallow all the humans in front of him, but Devourer remembered Patrick's words earlier, so he swallowed his anger. Be friendly. Gotta be friendly, Devourer muttered. Then he turned to the kid tugging at his cloak. So, what are you curious about, kid? The child's eyes immediately lit up. It asked Devourer if he had seen Lord Voon and Lord Gwyn in person yet. Gwyn was the prickly girl who had confronted Devourer before, but the name only sounded vaguely familiar. He had no real impression of them. I don't even know who they are, Devourer snapped. At this moment, Rosalina sheepishly approached from a distance. She was extremely nervous, but still wanted to properly apologize for taking Devourer's stuff. He clicked his tongue and let it slide since he'd already gotten his things back anyway. Devourer didn't want to hold a grudge against a child. Tot had just dismissed the villagers who were watching. He also approached and reintroduced himself to Devourer once again. The leader of the thieves' gang had ordered Tot to take charge and follow whatever the guy requested, but Devourer didn't expect Tot to be just as enthusiastic as Patrick. He said if you want to understand the village's current situation, you should see it with your own eyes, instead of just hearing about it. If you'd like, I'll lead the way and show you around the village right now. Devourer groaned 1,000,000,000 times in his head. I don't want to go. He didn't understand where humans got the energy and enthusiasm like that. But if he just sat there now, Devourer wouldn't be able to escape the role of MC for the 10,000 Why Questions program, so he decided to hit the road with Tot. They arrived at the first residential area, but the streets were deathly quiet, which left Devereaux deeply puzzled. Tot led him to a wooden door and said that, once this door opens, your questions will be answered. Just tell me already why all the mystery, Devereaux thought annoyed, but he followed Tot's lead anyway. Pushing the door open, the first sight that met his eyes was a couple lying sprawled on the ground. They didn't seem to be breathing anymore. According to Tot, these were people who had starved to death in this place. People couldn't even steal food from their neighbors because they had nothing to steal to begin with. The villagers lived in constant fear, never knowing when it would be their turn to be taken by death due to hunger. This struck Devereaux as incredibly strange. Usually, when a village faces famine, the anger is directed at the local lord. The people would rise up in rebellion, but the problem in Hastings was that the people were suffering so badly from hunger that they couldn't even bring themselves to fight back. It was as if Tot could read Devereaux's mind. He threw open the window of the house and looked contemplative. The Black Disaster has been happening in Hastings for over a month now. Why is the village so quiet, or why haven't the people risen up against you? Are you curious, Sir Knight? While Devereaux was losing his mind in Hastings, the two ladies left to guard the Hellcore weren't having a great time either. Agria was bored to death. She wanted to go to Hastings to find her idol, but of course Renee wouldn't give her the chance. A person of principle like her would never neglect the responsibilities at home that the Lord himself had entrusted to them. Lord Devereaux has placed his complete trust in us, you know, Renee said, trying to comfort the girl while inwardly laughing, because she knew full well the one the Lord truly trusted. Was her not this brat? Being young, Agria was easily fooled by the other woman's sweet talk. Just thinking that her idol trusted her made the girl instantly perk up. Renee sipped her tea leisurely. She had to stay sharp at all times because there was no telling when those humans might attack. Agria immediately used her magic, the Observer's Eyes, to scout around the dungeon. Renee was quite pleased to have an apprentice helping her out. Just as she was thinking of tidying up, Agria's expression suddenly changed. The Observer's Eyes had picked up something. It seemed there was an intruder, but the reaction wasn't huge, so it was likely that there was only one intruder. Please get ready, Agria, Renee said, standing up tensely. They're here. Just as Agria drew her weapon, a blinding red light flashed accompanied by the clicking of high heels on the ground and a seductive laugh. "Oh my! What are you two so panicked about?" A woman slowly appeared at the entrance. That beautiful face, pale skin, and a fiery figure could be none other than Lady Urzbach Battery, the mistress of the Castle Che dungeon. This surprise visit by Urzbach caught Renee off guard, as Devereaux wasn't here, so she hadn't prepared any fine food to treat their guest. Urzbach waved it off generously, saying she wasn't bothered by such things, but if Renee really wanted to prepare something delicious, she could give her some of her blood. "You're joking again," Renee said with a strained laugh. Urzbach dropped the teasing and turned to Agria with an interested look. "Who is this a new recruit?" Before Renee could answer, Agria spoke up in a boastful tone. It seemed the girl was always very confident about her Demon King lineage. "You want to ask about the Great One, me? I am the Demon King, ruler of the demons, the 17th descendant of Asmodeus Melchizedek of Abraham." Urzbach Battery looked at Agria's dramatic display and found it quite amusing. Young people are truly something else. After hearing Renee introduce the status of the lady in front of them, Agria immediately stopped crowing like a rooster. She pulled Renee aside and asked cautiously, "Hey Renee, if I live here, will I be able to meet the bosses of all the other dungeons?" Renee was clearly not pleased with this idea of Agria freeloading. After all, up until now, Devereaux still hadn't agreed to let this little brat become an official member of the ancient corps. Urzbach Battery leisurely ordered a bat to pour her some tea. It flapped its wings and instantly transformed into a handsome man to serve the lady. Mentioning Devereaux reminded Urzbach that she hadn't seen him or Patrick all day. Renee honestly replied that they had left a while ago. Urzbach's expression instantly turned grim. She hadn't expected them to be away at a time like this. Seeing the vampire lady's dark expression, Renee felt herself getting tense too, and from Urzbach's lips, she got a glimpse of the situation out there. The villages near Castle Che had been completely destroyed. The humans there were likely all gone too. But the strange thing was that not a single corpse could be found, only a sea of blood. Urzbach believed this wasn't a slaughter caused by humans, because the blood on the ground was all flowing in one direction, as if it had carved out a path. And the end of that path was surprisingly Hastings. This was the first time Agria had heard of something so bizarre. If all the bodies had disappeared, then there was a high possibility they had turned into zombies. Urzbach didn't rule out this possibility, though few had the power to do something like that. Most zombies lack intelligence, but the ones that do earn the special title of Elder, and at higher levels, if a zombie army moves in a pack, it means someone is behind them controlling them. At this, a name had already formed in Urzbach's mind.